Everyone. Welcome to this ASSAf workshop on open science. And the precise title is Democratizing Knowledge through Open Science. My name is Francesco Petruccione, and I have really the privilege to welcome you and to chair this morning's session. Yeah? I would like to greet you and welcome you all. I will not follow strict protocol because we will have to run a military operation this morning because we have a very, very full program, and I will be the policeman. Yeah. So, dear colleagues, welcome, and also dear distinguished representatives of the Academies of Sciences and representatives of many other important institutions and organization in this field. Yeah? I think it's really important that we are here today because the principles of open science are not just kind of a technical innovation. Yeah? It's really a really deep cultural shift. Yeah? That where we really need to make a joint effort to develop a really new collaborative effort across Southern Africa, across Africa, and across the whole world. Yeah, and I think we have the unique opportunity to lead by example and maybe leapfrog many other regions of the world that might be less inclined to embrace open science. Yeah? We have, as I mentioned, a very tight program. We will start in a minute or two with various welcoming messages by various stakeholders. This will follow a keynote presentation by Susan Veldsman, after which we have a lineup of stakeholders sharing with us their experiences and contributions to accepting and implementing open science concepts. After this, we have the opportunity for a shortish Q&A session, just under half an hour. And after this, probably the highlight will be the panel discussion at which all members of the Academies of Sciences in SADC have been invited. And towards the end, we will try to summarize and in a positive, proactive way and outline some way forward. Yeah, and this will, I invite you, all of you, to contribute, to make suggestions to the way forward, so that we can end this meeting with an action and an implementation plan. Yeah. So this is a very, very tight program. As I said, I will try to remind you to stick to your time in some way or another, and please just be aware of the time slot that has been allocated to you and just focus on the essential. I know all of us are busy and we don't want to run over too long. Okay, I think my time is coming to an end. So it's time for me to introduce Professor Himla Soodyall, the Executive Officer of ASSAf, who will give us a first welcoming address. So Himla, you're most welcome to switch on your video and share your screen if you wish to do so. I think you all know how this game of Zoom works.
Thank you, Professor Petruccione. Good morning, colleagues, and thank you very much for attending this very important workshop on democratizing knowledge through open science. It is my pleasure to welcome our partners in this event, namely the academies from Botswana, Eswatini, Lesotho, Malawi, and Zimbabwe. It's a great privilege for us to host this meeting in partnership with you, given the importance of open science. The Academy of Science of South Africa has recognized the transformative potential of open science. And I'm sure my colleague Susan will give us a lot more insight into that when she delivers her presentation. The open science policy was designed to enhance reproducibility, speed up innovation, and most importantly, build public trust in the scientific process. We believe that this shift is crucial for addressing the challenges of our time and for making science work for society as a whole. There are a few objectives that we'd like to achieve through this workshop. One is to raise awareness about the benefits of open science. Second, to facilitate meaningful discussions and networking among researchers. And given the interest by the attendants, I'm sure we're going to achieve that. So please use the Q&A to engage throughout and to make connectivities with colleagues on the workshop panel. We would like to encourage the adoption of open science principles within our academies to help build a culture of openness in research. And lastly, we hope to provide practical insights into tools and infrastructure such as high-performing computing, data management services, enhanced internet connectivity that can support open science. Among the list of people who are on the panel, I'm sure we're going to hear very, very interesting aspects from the way in which they are contributing to this topic. And once again, I wish to welcome all participants and our colleagues who are attending the workshop, and we look forward to an interesting day ahead. Thanks, Prof, and back to you.
Thank you very much, Himla. You're giving a fantastic example by making my life easy. Thank you very much for finishing not only in time, but with a few minutes to spare. So our next speaker is Dr. Sagren Moodley from the Department of Science and Innovation. Sagren, please, you're most welcome to share with us your welcoming message.
Thanks very much, Francesco, and good morning, everyone. I just have a few words, but I'll definitely keep within the 5-minute time slot. When we look at open science, you know, the theory underpinning it, implicit in those aims is the belief that open science can yield greater societal impact as compared with, you know, your traditional closed research. And it is for this reason that open science is increasingly attracting the attention of policymakers who aim to make both the scientific process and its outcomes more open and inclusive for all relevant actors, both within and outside the scientific community. So it has the potential then to drive greater societal impact of academic research and to accelerate progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals, by addressing inequalities in science, technology, and innovation. And it includes, amongst others, open access to scientific information and publications, making research data and software fair, that is to say, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. But very importantly for policymakers, it also involves the enhanced engagement of civil society. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about what we are doing within the Department of Science and Innovation in South Africa. As articulated in our white paper on science, technology, and innovation, and the accompanying decadal plan, the South African National Department of Science and Innovation promotes science that is collaborative, transparent, and reproducible in order to enable multidisciplinary and data-intensive research. And we also promote science with publicly available outputs that anyone can freely access, use, and share. So through the adoption of our national open science policy, South Africa aims to facilitate equality of opportunity within its national system of innovation and its national science system. And through the democratization of knowledge, which is the theme of this workshop, to enhance opportunities for environmentally sustainable and inclusive socioeconomic development through the scientific research endeavor. The DSI recognizes that the open science paradigm has the potential for broadening the benefits of science across society and for enabling the reproducibility and validation required for science to remain credible. A very good example that we have seen is the high-speed development of a global scientific response to COVID-19, where we saw barriers to exchanging the results of scientific discoveries being lowered and in many cases even removed, thereby supporting the often held view that open science is effectively a vehicle for the democratization of knowledge. The department supports the fair, trust, and care principles of open science, which I'm sure most of you are already familiar with, so I won't go into details there. But the most important principle for us in South Africa and within the department is that we follow the principle of as open as possible and as closed as necessary. So in other words, research output shall be open and consistent with the objectives of open science unless statutory, ethical, intellectual property, contractual, commercial, environmental, or research credibility considerations results in a risk to the key research subjects or to the stakeholders. And then my final message to the workshop here is that the SADC science community has a very critical role to play in the international effort to establish a global science commons, which enables active participation by SADC countries within a global knowledge enterprise and importantly also a global knowledge economy. So to this end, it is vitally important for SADC countries to develop actionable policy ideas aimed at improving scientific transparency, equity, and innovation. After all, science holds the greatest benefit for society when its processes are open, its methods are transparent, and its outputs are accessible to all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Moodley, for this very important message. Our next message is from the Pan-African Parliament. Mr. Ian Jalloh, please.
Yes, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Honorable colleagues, distinguished scientists, and esteemed partners. It's a profound honor to join you today representing the Pan-African Parliament under the leadership of His Excellency Honorable Chief Fortune Chalumbela, the President of the PAF, and at the direction of our clerk of the Parliament, Ms. Lindiwe Sisulu Kumalo. On behalf of the Pan-African Parliament, I extend our warm greetings and express our deepest solidarity with the Academy of Sciences and participants of this important workshop on open science. As we gather under the auspices of this program in partnership with the Kingdom of Eswatini, the Republics of Botswana, Lesotho, Malawi, and Zimbabwe, we are all united by shared commitment to the transformative potential of open science. The Pan-African Parliament wholeheartedly supports this vital initiative which seeks to democratize knowledge and make scientific advancement accessible to all. Your efforts to bring together scientific minds across our region to deliberate on open science are not only commendable, but essential for the future of African development. The Pan-African Parliament, as enshrined in the African Union's Constitutive Act, is dedicated to ensuring the full participation of African peoples in the development and economic integration of our continent. This Parliament is more than just a platform for dialogue. It is a catalyst for action, and we stand with you in championing initiatives like open science that have the power to reshape our societies. The work you are doing here today aligns perfectly with our mission to promote transparency, collaboration, and inclusivity in all aspects of governance and development. Open science, with its emphasis on freely accessible knowledge and collaborative research, is a key driver of progress in Africa. By fostering an environment where scientific knowledge is shared openly and equitably, we can ensure that the benefits of research are not confined to a few, but are enjoyed by all. This aligns with the PAP's commitment to human rights, democratic governance, and sustainable development. We are here to support and amplify the effort of this workshop recognizing that the success of open science in Africa is a shared responsibility. In recent years, we have seen how open science can address some of the most pressing challenges facing our continent, whether it be through improving access to scientific resources, fostering greater collaboration among African research institutions, or ensuring that African voices are heard in global scientific discussions. The Pan-African Parliament recognizes the crucial role that open science plays in bridging the gap between the global north and south and in promoting equitable access to knowledge. Our permanent committees, particularly those focused on education, science and technology, and health, labor, and social affairs, are ready to support the adoption and integration of open science principles across Africa. These committees, which are central to our legislative and policy-making processes, will work to ensure that the outcomes of this workshop are translated into concrete actions and policies that benefit all Africans. We understand that advancing open science requires not just advocacy, but the development of robust infrastructure and the harmonization of legislation across member states. For example, the PAP's efforts to develop the Pan-African Open Data Portal, which enhance access to legal information across the African Union, is a testament to our commitment to transparency and knowledge sharing. By making data and documents more accessible, we are not only improving governance, but also fostering innovation and empowering our citizens. This is the spirit of open science in action, and it is precisely what this workshop also seeks to promote. Moreover, the Pan-African Parliament's role in holding member states accountable for their commitment to open science cannot be overstated. We stand ready to ensure that the principles of transparency, inclusivity, and collaboration discussed here are upheld in all scientific endeavors across the continent. Our solidarity with you is not just in words, but in action. Through the legislative frameworks we help shape and the policies we advocate. As we move forward, the Pan-African Parliament will continue to also collaborate with regional economic communities and other key stakeholders to promote the coordination of policies and programs that support open science. By working together, we can create a vibrant, inclusive, and innovative scientific community that contributes to the global pool of knowledge and drives sustainable development in Africa. In conclusion, the Pan-African Parliament stands in full solidarity with the organizers and participants of this workshop. We are committed to supporting your efforts to advance open science and to ensuring that Africa becomes a leader in this new era of open, inclusive, and collaborative research. Together, we can build a future where scientific knowledge is a shared resource, driving innovation, prosperity, and well-being across our continent and beyond. Thank you, and may our collective effort bear fruit for the benefit of all Africans.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jalloh, for your message. Thank you very much. Our next message is from UNESCO, and I would like to invite Mr. Carlton Mukwevho, the Secretary General of the South African National Commission for UNESCO, to share his message. Please.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I will donate my minutes by saying very little. Ours, it's indeed just a message of support. As the South African National Commission for UNESCO, we promote the implementation of UNESCO objectives in the country in the 5 fields of UNESCO competency. And that is in education, in natural science, in culture, social and human science, and of course, in communication and information. Chairperson, the importance of science in society needs no overemphasis. We are here just to say we support the democratizing of knowledge through science, and we wish this workshop that it will provide us with some light and with meaningful deliberations. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mukwevho. And I thank very much the first round of speakers for really sticking to the time. Thank you so much. That's really much appreciated. So now it's time for our keynote presentation, and I would like to invite Ms. Susan Veldsman, the Director for Scholarly Publishing Program of ASSAf, to share her screen if you have a presentation. Please. Wonderful. Here it's coming. And maybe just perfect. Now it's in full screen. Thank you very much. Susan, you're most than welcome to start.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you very much for this opportunity to talk about accelerating open science, especially as a role of the Academies of Sciences in Africa. Thank you very much to the previous speakers who so eloquently actually contextualized this subject this morning, in which we have to talk and to debate and to see the way forward. It really makes my task much easier. In preparation for this PowerPoint and for this presentation, I was requested to actually step back a little bit and look more holistically at open science in Africa, and also then to perhaps explain what is open science and what is it that we expect, especially from academies, in fulfilling this particular role in promoting and advancing open science. I just want to mention and say, but open science is not new. And we tend to think about the nuts and the bolts of open science, and then we think, well, this is a very new thing, and it hasn't happened over centuries. And I would like to remind people around this sort of table in discussion, is that already in the 17th century, is that exchange and openness was at the heart of modern science. The first type of science communication was through journals, where scientific information was spread, and especially by societies. It was only of late where really commercial publishers entered this particular field, and where this openness of science communication actually then closed down, because these publishers actually had it as their principal responsibility to please their shareholders and not really the scientists. So there was a situation where it started to close up again. But let's be reminded also in the 20th century, when the World Wide Web was developed and it was rolled out to the rest of the world, how everything just opened up, and the concerns around sort of being so open then started to become sort of the critical and the core of discussions around the openness of information, and intellectual property right and trust and science and everything became questionable under the World Wide Web. Also, the first preprint repository, ARchive, which has been with us for many, many years and is still fulfilling a very important and credible role in physics as sort of the main subject of that preprint repository. And then the CERN was also established, and still till today, it's one of the largest collaborations amongst nations. Training and open education and sharing expertise across borders internationally. But then as a last sort of development, sort of coming into this wave of developments, of course, it's the fourth industrial revolution, where we are entering the digital age and the digital revolution with a very big advancements in big data, machine learning, and social media. And then this whole concept of openness has evolved, presenting us with new opportunities to enhance the rigor, the reliability, and the societal impact of scientific endeavors. I would like to kick off with this particular definition of open science to say that it's a movement to make scientific research, publications, data, physical samples, and software, and its dissemination accessible to all levels of society. Open science is transparent. It's the openness about open science that's very attractive to scientists, and accessible knowledge that is shared and developed through collaborative networks. So that's actually quite a very neat definition of open science, but I would like to unpack this a little bit more, because I think that we are slowly but surely actually developing to a much more advanced sort of definition of open science, encompassing actually many issues. I want to recognize the UNESCO document on open science, which sort of as core pillars has open scientific knowledge, open science infrastructure, and then open engagement and open dialogue at the core of its principles as open science. But what this graph is actually showing is the myriad of peripheral activities that have to take place to act upon sort of the open science remit that has been defined by UNESCO. So you can see there's open research, open data, open software, open hardware, infrastructural questions, and then very interestingly enough, quite a thick layer of citizen and participatory science, scientific volunteering, crowd funding, then reaching out to the different publics, especially indigenous people, marginalized scholars, local communities. I've been in the open access world since 2005, right from the beginning. And over the years, I have been very frustrated because open access never at the time seemed to have nestled itself properly into the scientific discourse as much as open science is currently doing. And why is that? And it is because just suddenly scientific scientists and researchers have realized, and sort of scholarly publishing and governments and civil societies have realized that there's a very particular value system surrounding open science as such, which speaks about quality and integrity, collective benefit, equity and fairness, diversity and inclusiveness, which is then wedged and built upon certain principles like transparency, equality, equity, responsibility, accountability, collaboration, flexibility, and sustainability. And for me personally, this whole value system with its principles is really manifesting itself very much into this open science space of things. And call us as scientists then together is to be very wary of these values in which we have to conduct science and the responsibility as a scientist to plow back what we do. So what I would like to offer this morning, and when I prepared this presentation, I really had sort of an academic of science hat wearing. And this particular definition of the International Science Council really spoke to me, because just suddenly it is just bringing these principles together under three main themes. But the words being chosen is very carefully crafted, and the nuances thereof actually tells us as an academy what is it that we need to do. So then open science then is defined here, that is science that is open to scrutiny. And sorry, I just have to move and talent and to the knowledge needs and interests of wider publics, very important. It makes the record of science, its evolving stock of knowledge, ideas and possibilities accessible and free to all, irrespective of geography, gender, ethnicity or socioeconomic circumstances. Open science also makes the data and the evidence of science accessible and reusable by all. Subject, and that's very important, to constraints, because there are constraints. Not everything can just be open, but there are some rules and some frameworks that it can function in. Constraints of safety, security, and privacy. And then, of course, very important, which really resonates very well with sort of the objectives within academies, is to open engagement with other societal actors in the common pursuit of new knowledge and to support humanity in achieving sustainable and equitable life on planet Earth. And I really thought that this definition is really starting to encompass and taking cognizance of the value system which we advocate in the open science environment. And it's really, as I said, very carefully crafted. We must note that national open science policies should be set in a broader government policy context of socio-economic development that takes cognizance of global issues codified within the Sustainable Development Goals, in order for all to work together and to pull into the right direction. Now, I just want to step back a little bit and just look at which open science policies are out there. There are many, there's a myriad. And what I'm just going to try and do here in my next couple of slides is really just give you some examples and a feel of what's already happening, not only internationally, but on the continent very specifically. This presentation has a very particular meaning to me. In 2018, we concluded a landscape study of open science on the Africa continent. So it was really like a rain check for me to have a look and see what has happened in the 6 years since we actually looked at the landscape of African open science, so to speak. And it was interesting to see that there has been some movement, but still some problems actually prevail and persist. As you can see internationally, it's a movement. It is a line of thought which is very well embedded into the science practices of Europe specifically. But then what I was really sort of proud of, in a sense, but that was also amazed me, and you would have noticed in the presentations of support just prior to my presentation, is the wealth of work starting to happen on a regional basis. If we just look at the African Union, so it's pockets of these things happening, and together they support and promote open science. Digital transformation, the African Union also with its data policy framework, and then also the agenda, all these things, and of course the work that the African Open Science Project is doing in STI policy alignments with open science. So you can see this on a policy level and on a regional level, there's quite some things happening there. Which is really quite heartwarming to see, because it does give us the framework in which we can work in. I've put AI regulation in here very particularly because I can even see on the continent that there are some strategies coming to the fore in terms of artificial intelligence. So this is another component which the last 3 years actually entered the scenarios of research quite actively, and it also poses, in some instances, actually a threat to scholarly writing, etc. But I think what was very nice to me is to observe is that the title of the African Union's strategy is Harnessing AI, Africa's Development and Prosperity. And I thought that was such a positive take actually on AI, and that is what we'd like to promote, because it could certainly assist in terms of our equity and access to information, and to overcome some language barriers, etc., etc. It was also interesting to know that still the Economic and Social Council within Africa, at its Africa Regional Forum on Sustainable Development in April 2024, is mentioning as a specific point as to implement science and technology and other strategies and roadmaps to accelerate the achievement of science-based targets of the goals, the Sustainable Development Goals, while promoting increased investment in research and development and open science and adequate intellectual property regimes, with a view to supporting human capital development and industrialization, and taking maximum advantage of the opportunities afforded to the African continent. And I thought it was such an important statement and recognition and support towards open science. If we then very quickly look at who are those countries that have an open science policy already or in development, at least within their country, you will see that the dark grays are those who are talking about open science policies in their countries. The orange one, which is Ethiopia, has adopted a open access policy, not yet an open science one. And South Africa is busy with its open science policy as well. But we must be very careful that we do not conflate open access and open science with each other. Although open access is a part of open science is still the much larger umbrella concept with many activities underneath it to promote open science and to have the real effect and impact of what open science should have. I just want to recognize the African Open Science Platform, which is a very ambitious project in positioning African scientists at the cutting edge of data-intensive science by stimulating interactivity and creating opportunity. My colleague, Dr. Tshiamo will speak to this meeting as well about the African Open Science Platform. But what is interesting, it's not just only regional that we're looking at open science, but we can now see that even between countries, there are some collaborations. This is the University of Zambia, which is forming a collaboration with the University of Zambia and other higher education institutions under the project called OSCAR 2.0. So this project then aims to foster effective digital transformation of education and science. So this is very interesting that education is now also brought into this fold under the open science umbrella and remit of things, and to open up education within different countries by exchange of students or by any ways or collaborative on research, etc. So I just want to highlight that bringing education also into the fold is very important. Develop digital infrastructure and connections, support regional economic integration by implementing open science principles and values in each participating country. So not only is it between countries, but the whole idea of collaboration and open collaboration is being stressed by this particular initiative. If we look at where do we find some information on articles being published in Africa, I have found 3, but I do have some questions about the 3 that I have found. The one was what I would call at the moment the data DR. That project was quite going in 2018 when we still looked at what are happening on the continent, what are the activities, etc. But I did pick up just the other day in University World News that the AAU is again launching her Africa-wide University Research Archive. So my question would be, is it different? Is it the same? And then also we have Afrikarchief, who is also setting up a repository of research in Africa. So my one question would be, wouldn't it been better to actually have collaborated and to pool the resources, thinking that we are really a resource-low continent as such? But I don't have the detailed information, so my comments might not be appropriate. But it crossed my mind, why do we have the 3? Why can't we pool resources? I'm focusing here on the Directory of Open Access Journals, DOAJ, because that is an index where open access journals are being listed, and only listed and indexed if it complies to certain criteria. And you can see it's the SADC countries, which is fairly well presented on this directory, and for the rest of the continent, it's not. So there's some more work to do on a journal point of view in terms of actually complying with sort of the criteria and the technical requirements to be part of that index. These are 2 very interesting projects which is happening on the Africa continent. So the one is actually has been completed, and that is the IPOL landscape of no-fee open access publishing in Africa. It's diamond open access journals, no fee to pay or to publish. This report has been completed, is available, and it's online. And very interesting enough, so this survey was based on 199 journals, 21 institutional, national, continental platforms that Diamond Open Access holds. And it was based on 25 country reports in Africa So it is important also to take cognizance of that report. But parallel to this study, there is also another study happening, which is giving a comparative overview of academics' views on the payments of article processing charges for publications in 4 national cases from the scientific periphery. Argentina, South Africa, Brazil, etc. So what we're trying to look now is to extend this particular report into Africa. I'm showing this because this is also an Academy of Sciences that is heavily involved in this research, which I think is important to understand the cost of knowledge in each of these countries as well. I want to talk a little bit about Open Research Africa, which is the equivalent of Open Research Europe. It is a repository, a preprint repository where open peer review also takes place. It's under the auspices of the African Academy of Sciences, and I think this is a platform that we must look at, that we must support, because it does mean that there is certain investments necessary to actually get going with this particular platform. It has its own reasons why it's perhaps not as successful as it was hoped to be, but I still think, again, as academies, we must look at something like this to support and to take forward. I think ARXIV is also busy with a preprint server, and it's a free preprint server as opposed to the previous preprint server that I showed you, which there are subscription fees involved, and that is also deterring researchers to deposit their articles on that server. And we know that in Africa that there are various opinions and applications for in the different fields and geographical regions for preprints. So it's still a field that we have to promote, and that's another reason why we have to get involved into these particular activities. And this is a very old graph, I know that, but I still think it gives us a sense of what is data sharing on the actual continent. And I'm quite sure some might not be in existence anymore, but I'm quite sure that a couple has actually been added to this particular map of Africa, showing the different data sharing initiatives. Again, very decentralized, not centralized, and it's sometimes very difficult to discover these different repositories of data. And I think what is very important is to note that there are only 2 data repositories who has a core trust seal, so it's a trusted repository. And I think that's another point that we have to work on in our collaborations, is to make sure that it's trusted and that it does receive some sort of accreditation. Of course, one part of open science is also collaboration. We are participating as a continent on very big collaborations, of which the H3A BioNet, which is a Pan-African initiative, is very large. And what I really like about this collaboration, that it's working with the actual problems, the infrastructure, the visualizing of the data. It's trying to find creative ways to empower scientists in Africa to participate and to also visualize the results of their own data collection. And then, of course, GBIF with the biodiversity, which is an international collaboration. What is very interesting in this field actually emerging now is for philanthropic collaboration. So that's philanthropic associations and fundings and funders, which are now starting to look at pooling their resources to have better impact into research and initiatives in Africa per se. There are a couple of institutions already involved in this, and what is very interesting that there is quite some investment in economic, in gender equality, health, education, and climate. As in compared with global collaborations, you can see the difference between there's a comparison there of African collaborations and global collaborations and the portions being allocated to them. So this is also a very interesting field starting to emerge, and you can just see how things are actually opening up and collaborations are becoming a core of the success of open science. Just want to mention, at this point in time, we still call it POPIA Code of Conduct for Research, but we are now changing it to a framework for research, and this is particularly, and it's pertaining and referring to the protection of personal information when sharing data. So we have big dreams for this particular project because we would like it to be accredited by the GDPR through the European Union, and it will imply that in Africa, when we share data, is that we try and adhere to this framework of sharing data amongst different countries. Africa is known for spinning its data out to other countries because we do not have sort of the right legal framework and infrastructure to sometimes host it on the African continent. And I think this must change. And this will certainly give us sort of a legal framework in which we can negotiate to retain access to the data that we have collected, but also when we share personal information, under which circumstances are we allowed to do that. The research and education networks are very well supported by Africa Connect and currently Africa Connect 3. We can also see that the different research and education networks are starting to embark on open science projects, trying to support researchers on the continent as such. And one of those are like NITheCS. I'm not going to talk much about this, but this is a very interesting theme that's coming to open science, and that's transdisciplinary research, where research is being done about what is the value of transdisciplinarity. And I think we must also bring this into the fold of what we're actually discussing, etc., under open science. So please just take cognizance of that as well. I'm now moving to actually academies. So what are we aware of that's happening between academies? So webinars like today are extremely important to actually to do and to create and to discuss. And then, of course, best practices, we've been involved in those. And there is an initiative between NASAC and ASSAf on the statement on open science, which we are looking forward to. I'm not touching upon these, but I just want to recognize them. I think they are very important. And that is human resources development strategies, because the amount of training necessary to look at data scientists, data practitioners, etc., and to promote this collaboration is extremely important. Also, the reform of research assessment frameworks, and to recognize and reward researchers and institutions that are participating in open science is becoming very important. And then to issue appropriate funding for people to participate in open science. So also support for data curation and data submission to public repositories is very important. And then we must think about the private sector funding as well, because just maybe we could have some tax reductions for them to entice them to also support us in our open science initiatives. Doing this presentation, I really had to look hard at what is ASSAf doing. Are we projecting in our goals as an academy that we are embracing open science, and how are we doing it? I sort of interrogated our strategic goals just to see, do they resonate with each other? And I was very pleased to sort of, again, that and to confirm for myself that our strategic goals are wide and strategic enough to actually embrace open science and to advocate for opening research in its entirety. So I also would like to encourage academies of sciences in Africa to have a look at your strategic goals. You know, maybe when you started way back then, one might have had a very narrow perspective on these things, but I think it's time that we also revisit our strategic goals to signal to the world what are we about to do. So what is it that academies of sciences should do? We should collaborate and advise on an enabling policy environment. We have a critical role to play here. We should create shared understanding of open science and set out diverse paths to achieving it. There's not one size fits all. I think we must really understand the countries that we live in, the work that we do there, and what will be the best way to actually create this understanding. So many African researchers and institutions actually faces barriers to access scientific knowledge, and we must try and remove those barriers across the continent. I know there's many initiatives, but are they having the right impact and value? We still have to ask that question. As so many times indicated already this morning, is that open science facilitates collaboration, data sharing, and the exchange of ideas, which is really very and vital for building research capacity within African institutions. We must also remember, and as I've showed you, is that open science encourages international intra-African collaboration. And we must help to integrate Africa research into global discussions and ensure that African perspectives are considered. We must foster a culture of open science and align incentives to support that. We must really promote that as well. We must try and be instrumental to create research programs on major issues that have specific relevance for Africa, like food security and climate change. We must also realize the socioeconomic benefit of open science and how profound they are, as it enables evidence-based policy making. And that's the biggest role that academies can play in this particular scenario. And support new business ventures, drives community-driven initiatives, all of which must contribute to Africa's development and growth. And then, of course, to co-create the state-of-the-art capacity in artificial intelligence. We must consider the ethical and legal considerations, intellectual property rights and copyright regimes within the different countries, and also very important, public engagement and awareness. I would like to conclude with my last two slides, Mr. Chairperson, and I hope I'm still in time and I'll be very quick in concluding. So research in Africa's open science landscape reveals a decentralization of open science activities, which is quite concerning. So this threatens and frustrates the efforts to provide evidence-based policy solutions and implementable actions for development in African countries. These are all very important projects with considerable potential, but they are islands of activity in a sea of relatively weak infrastructural provision and collaborative efforts. So collaborative efforts in intra-Africa open science areas can correct this and be the basis for exploiting the digital revolution in ways that energize African science. Academies of sciences are unique institutions, and they are capable of acting as major interface between government and civil society. And they should act as powerful and persuasive collective force in developing an Africa open science arena. We are in the position to provide authoritative and credible evidence-based advice on issues related to science and technology to governments. And we could increase our international impact through a powerful common voice. And I thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson, and thank you for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Susan, for the really great overview of many aspects of open science and the role of many stakeholders, and of course, in particular, the important role that the academies of sciences have to take over and leading the way for the rest of us to follow. Yeah, I think I saw that we had a few comments in the chat, and I want to encourage everybody to move them across to the Q&A. because we have at 11:30, we have allocated half an hour for questions and discussions, and we can pick up the questions from the Q&A at that stage. So our next session, we have 9 presentations of 9 different important stakeholders in our part of the world, in the area, of course, of open science. I think I will not introduce them one by one now. I will just introduce them as the turn to speak comes, just to save a few precious minutes and maybe to allow for a few more minutes for discussion if we stick to the timetable. The first stakeholder is the African Open Science Platform, and I would like to invite Dr. Tshiamo Motshegwa, who is the director, to share his 10 minutes of wisdom. Please, Dr. Motshegwa.
Thank you very much. Let me see if I can project. 10 minutes is very short.
I know. And I'm sorry that I keep you all under pressure, but
I'm not known for
time is precious. Yeah,
I'm not known for making short presentations, but I'll try very hard. And I will
remind you 1 minute before the end of the time.
I'm very happy that Susan made an excellent presentation. First of all, let me thank you for inviting us to this event and for convening such a very important forum for regional dialogue. I'll quickly just try to update colleagues on what the African Open Science Platform is and highlight a few areas that we've been engaging in, and obviously provide some thoughts there and there in the 10 minutes. I think Susan has done a fantastic job in terms of providing a background. Colleagues, I want to remind you of the UNESCO recommendations that you all know, and the obligations of all of us under these recommendations, and maybe to take stock of where we are as academies of science in terms of contributing to the implementation. There is no shortage of recommendations and policies. What is lacking is their implementation. So really, I wanted to highlight that this is our campus. I think as and when we go forward, we really need to introspect and see where we are. I do sit in the UNESCO recommendations Director General's Committee on the implementation of these. We were in Geneva in December, launching the UNESCO Open Science Outlook. You'll recall that every 4 years from now onwards, the countries will have to report on this progress. And I think it's very, very instrumental that you are convening as academies of sciences. You do have a role to play in forging this ahead. I think Susan also mentioned the issue of transdisciplinarity. The ISC has done a fantastic work over the past couple of years to develop a framework for mission-oriented science. I mention this because there are synergies and alignment with the open science agenda. The impetus is to move from science business as usual to science for transformation, infusing and imbibing all these very important areas of transdisciplinarity at the heart of what we do in science. And maybe if we can do this, we can really have a formula, so to say, for addressing societal challenges. We see here that SDGs, in terms of their progress, there's so much yet to be done. There was a big call, colleagues. I want to highlight this in case the academies of science here are not aware. There was a very big call to really say, look, can we develop proposals for sustainability hubs in the world, some of which may be in Africa. I mentioned this because I just checked the ISC website. There's a short list of some of these potential hubs, proposals for hubs, and I can see some Southern African interest there. And I think it would be important if any of these succeed in being selected, for us maybe to see how we can engage collaboratively, both regionally and continentally, in making sure that Africa does have a mechanism for engaging in transdisciplinary mission-oriented science, addressing the very issues that we know are concerned. Colleagues, for Southern Africa and other regional economic bodies, there is no shortage of a very good policy landscape related to utilization of science to address, for example, some of the developmental challenges. I have engaged in SADC for the past 14 years, so I'm well aware of some of these documents. What is needed is action plans and engagements by science and scientists in helping address some of these issues. And I think it's very, very important to have these linkages. STISA, for example, the Science and Technology Innovation Strategy for Africa, has just been reviewed. It showed huge gaps, the review that is. There's a final report that is publicly available that I'll really implore you to look at it and see how as academies it can come into play. STISA 2034 has been developed. One would hope that in its implementation plan, there must be a concerted effort to infuse open science programming. At the moment in STISA 2024, there was nothing. And there's a danger here that open science may not find its way there if the recent draft is not updated accordingly. So I really implore you and your networks and your leverage that you have to provide inputs into this particular one. I think let's also combine the conversations. There's a lot of conversations happening. Open science, AI, infrastructure, these are related. And I think it's very, very critical to connect the dots because if you talk about democratizing access to knowledge, all these things are relevant. So I wanted really to highlight all that. Africa is finalizing the development of the AI strategy. There's some consultations going on. I think there should be more consultations, but the document is there. And I think there's an opportunity to provide inputs. That's where AOSP comes in. We want to be this platform that provides a mechanism for us to dialogue on the continent about these issues, not only dialogue, but also promote open science. We can do this in many ways. We need projects, some of which could be projects that I've just highlighted across in the previous presentation, in the previous slides, regarding challenges coming from our regions. We need access to infrastructure. Not everybody can afford to invest in infrastructure. Those that can, we maybe talk to them and see if there's modalities for us in the continent to create an environment where we can use their infrastructure, obviously under some agreements. The issue of data science and AI we talked about, we need capacity to make sure that continentally we have our scientists well equipped to do science in the 21st century. We certainly need these networks that we are creating today to make sure that we intensify and amplify the impacts of all that we do. And I think this slide captures that very well. We are situated at NRF. South Africa is hosting this for the continent, the coordinating hub. I mentioned this slide because even internally within institutions like NRF, there's an avenue to promote and implement open science. And there's a concerted effort as we speak to try to see how NRF can go ahead in the near future and perpetuate and promote open science internally. You can see that we've got national facilities. These are very large organizations that, if properly supported, can obviously cater for open science internally. There's synergies globally. There's a development of a global open science cloud. Countries need to develop these open science platforms. So regionally, we need these open science platforms. Globally, we can create a platform that we can then connect and do things. Susan mentioned the open science policies in the continent. Colleagues, we need these policies. These provide the scaffolding under which everything goes. All the planning has to be supported by policies and strategies. Without policies and strategies, it's a non-starter. We can obviously do things bottom up, but we need them. I wanted to highlight this to say it doesn't have to be complicated. It's a simple document that provides a scaffolding under which everybody can work, provides the roles and responsibilities, and provides a number of pillars that needs to be addressed and by who. I think institutionally we need to move, nationally we need to move, and we can look at the example of Ethiopia, even though they have their own challenges. But I like the succinctness of the policy that they have, and it provides a very good example. We need to have synergies regionally in terms of AOSP and the things that I mentioned policy-wise. And we have a modality where we have regional nodes. We have nodes in North Africa, in Egypt, nodes in East Africa, and nodes in Southern Africa, who we then work together to promote open science in those regions. We are working very hard in terms of policy influence. We worked with the SADC Secretariat to engage at the ministerial meetings to position open science. And we managed to get some decisions to say, look, SADC as a region do recognize, obviously, beyond having agreed to provide, to be part of the UNESCO recommendations, also sees the need for an open science agenda progression in the region. So I'm sharing there with you the decisions that were done in the last ministerial framework, ministerial meeting, where we managed to position open science. I want to highlight very quickly some of the prominent partnerships that we are making to make sure that we advance this agenda in the continent. I want to specifically highlight the role of the International Science Council. There's an initiative going right now regarding having a dialogue about reforming scientific publishing. And I think this is an overdue dialogue. We're also engaging CODATA, as you know, in terms of the Global Open Science Cloud, and also in pushing for making data fair. And of course, I mentioned UNESCO. I think these bilaterals we have in the BRICS with China, for example, very, very instrumental. There's the international conference happening next week on big data and sustainable development goals. The Chinese Academies of Sciences were here in South Africa. They're also very keen to see how we can engage. The issue of fair digital objects, making data fair, but also encapsulating these in digital objects and creating an infrastructure for these things is quite important. We are engaging in that platform, those platforms as well. There are some big organizations that have got open science programs with a lot of content and a lot of training materials, a lot of avenues. We are constantly working with those to engage. We need projects, colleagues, projects that can exercise the African infrastructures, exercise the African networks, and solve continental challenges. Some of them are data intensive. I wanted to highlight that we have some of these, and we can use them as conduits to really tease out the challenge that we have. There are opportunities across board. In South Africa, we need to think about mechanisms for implementing the research infrastructure roadmap. Therein, there will be opportunities to discuss open science. We need to advance that open science policy that Susan talked about, including the modalities maybe for developing an open science cloud. For example, as NRF, we also need to push the implementation of the open science policy that has been drafted. And regionally, I wanted to highlight that indeed in SADC, through my experience over the years, there are some synergies that we can ride on regarding open science. Continentally, I mentioned the AU Artificial Intelligence Strategy. There's the AU Data Framework. There's the STF SDGs roadmaps. There's also an opportunity multilaterally through the South African G20 presidency that is coming in 2025 to be able to push some of these things. And of course, I mentioned the global avenues, including through the ISC. Maybe very quickly, 1 or 2 slides. We do engage in open access as AOSP. I wanted to share some of these slides there to highlight some of the activities that we're embarking on. There's some very good opportunities in 2025 with UNESCO and CERN regarding digital libraries. ASP is engaging there. We do engage those that are engaging in digital archiving. That is a critical area. And I think Susan touched upon some of those. We know the gaps, colleagues, regarding open access. And we know what we need to do. Maybe what we need is action. And finally, we have conferences that we are part of that will also provide us to do dialogue. Of note is the December conference that ASP and IRD and the National Research Foundation and others are planning. And of course, we've got the Global Diamond Access Conference that we're also part of, coming off of the conference in Mexico. This was in December, it's in Cape Town. And of course, finally, you know, IDW is coming here. And there's an opportunity for the science councils, the science academies to help ignite conversations about data, open access, and all the avenues of open science by 2027 and see where we are in terms of progress. We'll be in China next week for the International Forum on Big Data and Sustainable Development. Again, the issues of open science and open data are there regarding some of the areas of SDGs. ASP is engaging across board in all these fora, and we are working very hard to say, look, these conferences must come to Africa. We were in the International Symposium on Open Science Clouds last year. We want to bring it to Africa so that we can domesticate these conversations right here with our stakeholders and move together swiftly on this. I think I'll stop there, Chairman, and thank you very much for having us. And I'm looking forward to concrete discussions on how we can get things going and get things done on the ground regarding implementation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Motshegwa, and thank you so much for even saving us a few minutes. Thank you very much.
Very unusual. Thank you. Thank you.
Much. Yeah, no, it's a memorable moment. Yeah, thank you very much. And also, thank you very much for indicating really practical steps in your presentation, because that's something that we need to keep in mind for the last session in this workshop. The next stakeholder is the Network of African Science Academies, and the representative is Professor Igle Gledhill. Igle, thank you very much. you are welcome to share your presentation.
Right. Hello, everyone. Is my presentation visible, the NASAC statement on open science?
Yes, yes, we can see it clearly.
Thank you. So I will spend a couple of slides on just introducing NASAC. It is the network of African science academies, and its members are academies only. So this is a network of academies. There are 30 member academies. It's an initiative that was started by the Inter-Academy Partnership, IAP, in 2001. And it's therefore independent, and it offers authoritative, credible advice for policy formulation for sustainable development in Africa. Since academies, when convened together, are able to attack different problems. Next slide, please. So I have a list which is a little difficult to read of the 30 current members. And next slide, please. Right, so the programs of NASAC are academy development, capacity building, climate change, decarbonization, science education, synergy building, and women for science. And there are academy building sessions, which I think those present have been participating in. Thank you for that. Next slide, please. A couple of projects and reports coming through are, for example, decarbonization of transport. Next, please. Protecting human health against climate change. Next, please. Wonderful interactions with the International Science Council, looking at how transdisciplinary research happens in Africa. Next, please. The project reports cover, for example, climate change adaptation. Next, please. And there are statements and policy briefs, which are part of the way in which science is in an advisory capacity. Next, please. There are also annual meetings. One is coming up, as well as webinars, which are published as reports, for example, predatory academic practices. Next, please. So academies in general are vehicles for evidence-based reasoning to go to governments. And NASAC, in terms of open science, requested ASSAf, the Academy of Science of South Africa, to partner and collaborate in producing a statement on open science. It's in final preparation with the NASAC Secretariat, and I'm going to give a brief summary now. As advocates for scientific advancement and innovation across the African continent, the Network of African Science Academies proudly encourages and endorses the principles of open science. Open science embodies the ideals of transparency, collaboration, and accessibility, and it fosters an environment conducive to accelerated discovery on the equitable dissemination of knowledge. Next, please. In an era marked by complex global challenges, open science serves as a catalyst for progress by breaking down traditional barriers to information. By promoting open access to research findings, data, and methodologies, we empower scientists, researchers, and policymakers to build upon each other's work, facilitating the rapid development of solutions to pressing societal issues. On this slide, I have highlighted some of the possible walls between researchers, publishers and users, and the users and the health of the planet. Paywalls do inhibit transfers, and it is ultimately our planet Earth that pays the cost. So Diamond Open Access can help us profoundly. Next, please. The collaborative nature of open science extends beyond national borders, and it creates opportunities for researchers from diverse backgrounds to collaborate and contribute to the collective body of knowledge. This inclusivity is essential for addressing the unique challenges faced by the African continent, as it allows for a more holistic and contextually relevant approach to scientific inquiry. Next, please. Moreover, open science enhances the reproducibility and credibility of research, important in this age where so much questioning of science is taking place. And NASAC affirms its commitment to fostering a culture of integrity, accountability, and trust within the scientific community. Next, please. Open science can only be successful with the mindful application of the cardinal guiding principle, as open as possible, as closed as necessary, because that recognizes the legislative environment, the critical socioeconomic role of intellectual property rights, and ethical considerations, environmental considerations, contractual promises, and research credibility considerations. I'm going to step out of the statement for a moment and just say one cannot open data to the extent that it impacts on vulnerable populations or on very vulnerable biomes. Next one, please. Critical success factors, certainly in policy implementation, one must be very mindful and take cognizance of publishing realities at present, especially the necessity for both authors and publishers to be wary of predatory publishing practices. Likewise, trusted security, especially security like core trust seal, stakeholder engagement, changing evaluation practices within universities and industry, global compatibility, and sustainability are considerations. By sustainability, we mean financial sustainability in particular. So, careful change management. Next slide, please. Includes the evolution towards a culture of open science, as well as support by human resource development. If this interface between technology and people doesn't work well, it won't work well for Africa. So NASAC commends the UNESCO recommendation on open science for providing a comprehensive framework. It is actually a brilliant recommendation to read. Its definition of science is used all over the world. In alignment with this recommendation, NASAC, the Network of Academies of Science of Africa, will call upon governments, institutions, and researchers across Africa to actively embrace and promote open science initiatives. By doing so, we believe that we can unlock the full potential of the scientific community, accelerate progress, and ultimately contribute to the well-being and sustainable development of our continent. Next slide, please. The Network of African Science Academies stands united in championing open science as a cornerstone for a more collaborative future for African scientific endeavors. And I'd like to acknowledge the scholarly publishing program at ASSAf and the Secretariat at NASAC, and especially to Ms. Ina Smith for development of this draft statement. I don't think there's a next slide, but that's it. Oh, thank you very much. And I'd be happy to take questions later on. Thank you. Over to you, Francesco.
Thank you very much, Igle, for the very informative presentation on the global activities of the Academy of Sciences in Africa. Thank you very much. Then our next stakeholder is the Southern African Development Community, SADC, and the representative is Mr. Reaboka Morakabi, who is the Program Officer for Science, Technology, and Innovation in the SADC Secretariat. Mr. Morakabi, please, you're most welcome to share your presentation, or if you're ready. Here we go. Excellent. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Let me check if my slides are moving.
Not yet, but we see your cursor moving. Yeah, perfect. They're moving.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Reaboka Morakabi. I'm the Program Officer for Science, Technology and Innovation at the SADC Secretariat. And thank you on behalf of the SADC Secretariat. Thank you for inviting us for this important discussion, because this is part of the ministerial decisions that we engage in this kind of policy dialogues to discuss issues on open science. My presentation is mainly on sharing with you the commitment of the SADC Secretariat in terms of promoting open science in the region. So my presentation will just be a small one, it will be a short one, of course. I would like to share with you the background and introduction because the SADC Secretariat is guided by different policy instruments. For instance, the SADC Treaty, which speaks to promoting the development, transfer and mastery of technology, which is one of the 10 strategies to achieve the objective of the SADC region. Then we have the SADC Vision 2050, which envisioned the region to be an industrialized and integrated region by 2050. We also have the Regional Indicative Strategic Development Plan, and its outcome on science, technology, and innovation is enhance the regional technological capability and capacity through science, technology, and innovation. And we have the Protocol on Science, Technology, and Innovation, of which its objective is to foster cooperation and promote the development, transfer, and mastery of science, technology, and innovation in member states. Then we have other policy frameworks like the industrialization strategy for the region. But what I want to share with you with regard to these policy instruments or documents is that when you look at them, you can see how open science can assist in terms of achieving these objectives that I have just mentioned here. So we have envisioned 3 growth phases in the region, and one of the key focus was the agro-processing, mineral beneficiation, and pharmaceuticals value chains. So to promote these value chains, like we have already heard from different speakers that what is needed is collaboration. So with collaboration, you know, we have most of the member states, they lack in terms of having a strong innovation systems, which says our regional innovation system is very weak because of weak collaborations. So with open science, we believe that we can be able to strengthen those collaborations and be able to achieve the objectives in terms of industrializing the region. So we have aimed to achieve the phase 1 was, as you know, that the SADC region is endowed with resources. So the phase 1 was ranged from 2015 to 2020, whereby it was a front loading of the industrial development and market integration and infrastructure. So in this phase 1, we were projecting to have a growth annual of 6% in terms of GDP for the region. Then we have phase 2. We are in phase 2 now, but we are not yet strong in phase 2 because we are still trying to diversify our economic growth, and we are still trying to strengthen our systems of innovation And we are also trying to be competitive and improve the productivity as using the science, technology, and innovation. Most of you, if you have seen that during the science, the SADC Industrialization Week, the theme there was talking about promoting innovation as a driver for industrial development. So this is where we are. We are in phase 2, but we haven't done much there, but we are still trying to figure out how we can improve our productivity and also industrialize the region. So the aim is to get to phase 3, whereby we want the region to be a knowledge-based economy and also an innovation-driven economy. So we hope that open science will assist us in terms of achieving these objectives. As I have already mentioned that we are a factor-driven region. Of course, with a bit of investment in research and development, will be able to achieve what we want to achieve as the region. But the challenge now still remains with low investment in research and development. As you can see, the cross-domestic expenditure on research and development is very low, as it was stated in the STISA 2024 as one of the target that we should meet 1% of the GDP and invest it in research and development. So as you can see here, Angola has 0.07% of GET. Botswana is 0.46, though they haven't provided the source, but they have submitted this information to the Secretariat. So we have DRC 0.43%, Eswatini 0.32%. As you can see, none of the member states, they have been able to achieve the 1% investment in research and development. And South Africa has declined because in around 2019, South Africa was around 0.8. But now after the COVID, they have moved to 0.61%. So which means instead of going forward now, we are going back as far as putting resources into research and development. So I think investing in research and development is very key, because when we talk about open science and we are emphasizing on collaborations, those collaborations should bring out products. Those collaborations, we should have at least see the impact of those collaboration in terms of sharing knowledge and in terms of sharing data. But we shouldn't only just share data and knowledge, but we should be able to come up with products that are going to industrialize the region. So I'm basically showing you that with the vision that we have, on other aspects, we are still lacking, and we should try to work hard in terms of balancing everything. So we have these policy frameworks and legal instruments with the Protocol on Science, Technology, and Innovation, which was developed in 2008, and it entered into force in 2017. Now we are in the process of reviewing the protocol, because issues of open science, they are not there, they are not catered for in the protocol. So we should make sure that we try to, maybe when we do the review of the protocol, because now we have just published the tender for the review of the protocol. So hopefully when we get to the development of this new protocol that we're going to review, then we'll also include issues of open science in that protocol, because even the issues of AI, they're not there. Our protocol is outdated, so that is why we are trying to do the review. We did the assessment in terms of implementation of the protocol, because we wanted to see how far member states have gone as far as implementing this protocol. So we have the report on that. I will share with you. Then we have the SADC Charter establishing the Women in Science, Engineering and Technology organization, which was approved in 2018. And we also try to talk about the issues of inclusivity, because we don't want to leave women outside when we talk about issues of science, technology, and innovation. So we want women to be included, women to be part of the industrialization process of the region. That is why we came up with this charter, but though member states, they haven't yet established national chapters. I think there are about 4 member states at the moment that have already established their national chapters. So we have quite a number of policies and frameworks and instruments. You can see that we have the SADC Intellectual Property Framework, which was approved in 2018 by the Council. I'm mentioning it because when we talk about issues of open science, we should also consider issues on intellectual property rights. How do we strike the balance? How do we strike the balance between open science and intellectual property rights? We are also promoting issues on indigenous knowledge system. We're promoting research on indigenous knowledge systems, whereby we are trying to bring knowledge holders, indigenous knowledge holders together with modern scientists to work together and assist to drive the development and industrialization of the region. But what I want to emphasize here is that there is need to look into these things when we're talking about open science, because I think the way our intellectual property frameworks are structured, there might be some kind of a paradox or a conflict between open science and intellectual property. So we might need to revisit our own policies on intellectual property rights. So I think this can be done as far as we know that we have the MOU with UNESCO, and we also have the MOU with ARIPO. So if we come together, I know UNESCO has recommendations, as Dr. Tshiamo has shown. And we have, since we have the MOU with ARIPO, we can also try to work together and to see how we revisit our own intellectual property policies to
Mr.
make sure that
you have one more minute. You have 1 more minute.
1 more minute, okay.
Yes,
then
please.
Let me just go straight to the ministerial decisions. I think that Dr. Tshiamo has already spoken to this one. Then we have the ministers, they directed the SADC Secretariat to work with UNESCO to develop a draft regional framework and guidelines. We have set some resources for this one. I think what we can do, I would like to urge this meeting maybe to consider if we work together in terms of drafting the terms of references so that we can have this framework and guidelines on open science in the region. So we also, the SADC Secretariat was directed to work with African Open Science Platform and also work with UNESCO to promote and track the implementation of the UNESCO recommendation on open science. So this was what I was talking about striking the balance between intellectual property and open science. Then we have the ministers have already urged the member states, like there was a speaker who talked about engaging the SADC member states in open science. So the ministers have already agreed and they have urged the member states to take into account international standard setting instruments, such as UNESCO recommendation on open science, when they do revise their own STI policies, which is a similar task that we will have to do when we do revisit our own protocol on science and technology. So the National Academies of Science, we were, the ministers for science, technology, and innovation have already directed the Secretariat to work with the National Academies and also to make sure that we capacitated the National Academies in terms of maybe having some policy dialogues, and also try to strengthen their operations. So this is all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Morakabi. I was going to give you the second warning.
Minutes.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, then without further ado, let's move to the next presentation by the Center of High Performance Computing. And I would like to ask Mr. Mervyn Christophers, who is the director of the CHPC, to start with his presentation. Thank you very much. Please.
Thank you very much, Prof, and good afternoon, colleagues. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you. I think I'm going to go right straight into it. So when we think of open science, we think of the SADC region, one of the areas that we've been very focused on over the last couple of years is access. And so when I think of this term open science and democratization, I think some of the words that come to mind for me is inclusivity, open access, collaboration, and sharing. And so our role as the Center for High Performance Computing has really been about how do we extend and expand access for collaborative science. I think we've been doing three things over the last couple of years. We've been enhancing access to advanced research services. We've been supporting the regional collaboration efforts of SADC, and I'll speak a little bit more about that very shortly. And we've also been facilitating building local capacity and expertise, which obviously all of us realize is probably one of the critical areas that requires focus and attention. And so there are four things I probably would like to touch on in my short presentation. I think, we have a project that is started about 10 years ago, and it's called the HPC Ecosystem Project. I'll talk a little bit about how we are developing and advocating for a localized cloud infrastructure within the SADC region. And then I will lastly touch on the importance of establishing strategic partnerships with emerging technology communities. And so the role of the Center for High Performance Computing is really threefold, was, like I said, advance computational capabilities to accelerate scientific research, facilitate collaboration, and make complex data analysis more accessible. So what is HPC, for those of you who don't know? It's really about a supercomputer that can enable a faster data processing as opposed to using your local computer. And I always like to use the example of the weather forecast. If you had to take your laptop and you had to try to predict the weather using the current weather models, because your current laptop uses serial processing, it will take a few months, up to a year. But because a supercomputer has parallel processing, it will take up to a few hours. We're situated in Cape Town. For those of you who are in Cape Town currently will know it's very stormy and windy, but this is where we're at. And this is where our facility is located. We're part of a system called the National Integrated Cyber Infrastructure System. And probably about 10, 15 years ago, the basis for creating this particular unit is to actually underpinned by the motivation that a scientist, a researcher, requires three fundamental building blocks, three fundamental capabilities. You need connectivity, and that is allow you to access the internet or collaboration partners or other services. You need data where you can store all your research, and then you need computational services. And those three capabilities were put all together in one center called NITheCS, and essentially the Center for High Performance Computing is part of that. And you'll be hearing from the other two centers very shortly. And so what capability do we have as a Center for High Performance Computing? Well, we have digital research infrastructure, we have a high performance computing cluster, we have a GPU cluster, we have a localized cloud platform, we have a tier 2 node facility because of our membership with the CERN experiment. We have a number of collaboration projects with SKA, the HPC ecosystem, which I'll talk about shortly, Sarao, SOARS, and with CETA. And then obviously a big focus on us at the moment is around how do we partner with these emerging and disruptive communities. They're kind of, in my mind, the new users of HPC. We are focused on training and skill development. And then one of our flagship human capital development projects is a student cluster competition. The team consists of three units, and we have a research support team, which is really a team that is focused on assisting and helping our researchers with the research projects. So in most cases, these research support teams facilitate and help them with the coding, help them with applying the workloads to the cluster, and kind of formulating their problems so that it can be then run on the cluster for an outcome. Our technical manager looks after all the hardware and the infrastructure, and then our operations manager makes sure that a lot of our projects get deployed and implemented. And then we have, obviously, within that team, a data center facilities manager. I thought to show you that our primary responsibility is providing access to the academic institutions. And a very small percentage of our current user community is situated within the African region. Maybe just to drill down from within the SADC region, you'll see that we have probably about 4 or 5 countries that currently are accessing our HPC system. And for us, that kind of is what created this particular project, that you do have unequal access across the SADC region to high-performance computing services. And how do you address that? You cannot have centralized services only. You need to decentralize those services and provide the local country with the capability for HPC access. And so what happened about 10 years ago, we've approached a lot of the tier 1 facilities globally, and we've repurposed and decommissioned smaller HPC clusters across the SADC region. We provide online HPC technical support to system administrators, and we're also building a community of HPC administrators where they essentially are providing internal training, internal support, and growing this community. But unfortunately, there still exists a significant skill gap within the SADC region, even though we have developed this online training. And so what we are busy looking at as a demand from the SADC region is actually to provide some type of formalized structured HPC consulting services. Professor, I've got 1 minute left. I see you. You're coming up.
1 minute.
I think maybe just in my 1 minute, I would maybe want to talk about this particular one. Let me end with this. And so I think for us, what is emerging within the African context is also a new user of high-performance computing, which is driven largely by deep learning as well as ML and AI. And so I think for us, as we kind of look to the future, what we've got to look at is how do we expand access and extend access to some of these emerging tech. And one of the areas that we want to look at for the SADC region is quantum computing. We're currently, with Francesco and his team, busy deploying quantum access to our South African community. But I think something that we could look at as we take the learning from our deployment to look at something very similar for SADC. And with that, I will end. Thank you, Francesco.
Thank you very much, Mervyn, for the very nice contribution and for mentioning quantum computing. Thank you very much. We finished perfectly on time, so thank you very much to all the speakers of this first part of the workshop. I really appreciate your timing skills. Thank you very much. We have now 10 minutes break. Yeah, so it's time to get a cup of coffee or a tea, and we will meet here again at 10:55. Yeah, and so that we can start on time. So enjoy your short break, and we will see you again in about 9 minutes. Thank you. See you just now. So welcome back. I hope you all had the time to enjoy a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. Now it's time to move on with the next stakeholder, which is the Data Intensive Research Initiative of South Africa, the RISA. And the representative will not be Dr. Anwar Wahed as planned, but Mr. Katlego Pozoko. Mr. Pozoko, please, you're welcome. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. All right. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. And as mentioned, my name is Katlego Pozoko. I'm going to be giving this presentation on behalf of Dr. Anwar Wahed, who would have loved to be part of this conversation, but due to other conflicting commitments, he couldn't, and he's asked me to fill in. I'm the Data Services and Applications Manager at DIRISA, and I'd like to share a bit about DIRISA as a national infrastructure for open data and also in support of the democratization of knowledge through open science. A bit about DIRISA. DIRISA stands for the Data Intensive Research Initiative of South Africa. It is established by the Department of, is an initiative of the Department of Science and Innovation, managed by the Council of, implemented by the Council of Science and Scientific and Industrial Research. It is part of the NITheCS, which is the National Integrated Cyber Infrastructure System. And I think my colleague, Mr. Marvin Christophels, has given a brief about the Center of High Performance Computing, which is also one of the components, and DIRISA is one of the 3 components. So as DIRISA, as part of the NITheCS, we also are involved in the support of and skill development and across various domains. The infrastructure that which NITheCS provide, inclusive of DIRISA, is geared such that it promotes open data, open science, and it also provides an infrastructure that supports various domains that are in alignment, of course, with the SDG, Sustainable Development Goals in various domains, as can be seen on the presentation there, that it covers a broad spectrum: energy, physical sciences, health, as well as other human social sciences, to list a few. Some of our, to touch briefly on some of our objectives. One of our objectives is to build and maintain a national data infrastructure through which researchers and organizations are able to place their data, share it, and we provide a collaborative environment that would encourage open science. And we also are actively involved in the advocacy for sound data management practices, wherein we provide tools such as the South African DMP2 data management planning tool, through which researchers and any user can be able to plan their data and also data management, as well as share and upload their data. We collaborate with various stakeholders. We're involved also in the engagement that are geared to building capacity, some of which include the student datathons, wherein we train pre-tertiary students as well as university graduates or university undergraduates with skills aligned to data science, but not limited to that. And of course, we do participate in various forums that are. It seems
that we have lost the audio.
I can still hear, Professor.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Gledhill, I can still hear you clearly.
Okay, thanks. So we do agree, we do share the view with, as many would know, that data can be viewed as a very valuable asset, but it can be quite expensive to generate and produce and to preserve. So part of our mandate is also to provide an infrastructure that improves, that can help the improvement on the return on investment. And we do that through providing a platform that encourages multidisciplinary collaboration across the various ecosystems, as well as a harmonized environment for data management. And we do this also with the incorporation of federated identities across our infrastructure. And in comparison with the global data commons, DIRISA can be viewed as in the tier 1 level, such as alongside those that in Europe, like UDAT, as well as JISC in the UK and Australia. Of course, we do have interface also with other thematic organizations such as SANSA and ILUFI, and institutions, of course, such as various universities. And this is not only those that which are integrated in our environment, but some of which we engage with. And what exactly do we do? What we do is we provide data services that are supporting data-driven research, and we also are quite active in the advocacy for open research data management practices, and we provide such a robust infrastructure for that, and also the tools that I've alluded to, which I'll touch briefly on the next slides that will follow. And of course, it is important to develop the accompanying skills and expertise so that we can continue to leverage existing opportunities on the assets, that data assets. And some of the services that which we provide include a subscription service, which is a single sign-on where users are given allocated 100 gigabytes of space on which the data can be saved. And of course, we are able to provide even larger capacity upon request. We have a data deposit tool that allows users to upload and publish as well as share their data sets. And of course, the control is in the reach of the user. We don't necessarily control the data, but we provide a robust infrastructure for that purpose. And we do have a tool that allows the planning, and we encourage our research community to make use of the data management planning tool, which makes it a good approach in view of the point I mentioned on maximizing the return on investment on data. And of course, we are actively developing other services such as the data share tool that will allow users to share. And this is in line with the open science, open data. And of course, users can share with their collaborators as well as the community. And our services can easily be accessed through our website. And the process of subscription is quite fairly straightforward. And behind that, there's of course an architecture that integrates the data management system, which is IRODS, that's neatly integrated with the HPC for compute. And we've got 2 areas of storage for both, as well as cold storage for active use, as well as for preservation, which would be the passive data. We do also share with the perspective that data is important to be, in terms of open science, it should be open as possible and closed as necessary. And we are aligned with that. Of course, in view of that, there are questions that people might ask or users to say, of course, how safe is my data? Yes, the data is on a platform that has resiliency and redundancy that also includes multi-party checking. We should make sure that there's also regular integrity checks. And of course, not anyone can access this, but the users, administrators are also limited. And of course, the compute is done at the CHPC in view of a question on how this data is going to be processed or can be processed. And it is important that we believe that in partnership and participation with various forums and stakeholders, it would be possible to attain data sovereignty, and also in alignment with promotions and recommendations to promote fair data principles, as well as visibility. And
you have 1 minute.
Okay, thank you. As a roundup, we do align with that there's a need to make data accessible, make it freely usable as well as reusable, and also allow for participation and collaboration across various parties. And I think I'll just quickly skip on that and indicate that we also are, as part of NITheCS, involved in the implementation of efforts geared to promoting open science. And in short, we do want to also echo the message that data can be very it's one of the useful resources to advance open science. And with such an infrastructure, we can actively work together in democratizing knowledge, as well as making it open to the broader community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pozogo, for the very instructive and useful presentation, sharing all the tools that ERISA offers. Thank you very much. Our next stakeholder is Sagren and the UbuntuNet Alliance, and this representative will be Mr. Thokozani Kwala, and not Mr. Sabelo Dlamini as announced in the program. Mr. Kwala, please, you're welcome to share your screen.
Thank
and
you.
start the presentation.
You see how I can show. Are you able to see my slide?
Yes, we can see your slide. Yeah.
Okay, no, thank you.
As I mentioned earlier, my name is Thokozani Kwela. I'm the group leader for the Services Development and Integration team in Sagren. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Sabelo Dlamini, the director of Sagren, who is unfortunately unavailable due to other commitments, but he's asked me to make this presentation on Sagren and the services offered by Sagren. I see the presentation. Is it? The slideshow. Okay. Is it moving on your side?
Yes. You moved you move to the next slide. Yeah, thank you. It works.
Okay, thank you. Let me try and move very fast within the allocated time. Basically, Sagren is an NREN. We are the South African NREN. Basically, we provide specialized network infrastructure and services that are aimed at the research and the education communities. Unlike your commercial networks, there's over 130 NRENs globally targeting or offering services to the research and education community. The key things about NRENs is that we try and over-provision the resources in terms of bandwidth or network speed for the research and education community, and at a low cost, with the whole objective of making sure that research can proceed at low or little cost to the beneficiary community, which is the research and education community. And as the NREN, the South African NREN, we are part of the regional REN called UbutuNet Alliance. But I'll speak on UbutuNet a bit later. But these regional RENs are quite a few. We've got UbutuNet Alliance. There's GIANT in Europe. So that's where these NRENs come, or they're part of these regional RENs. And then just to speak of where Sagren fits in this whole picture within the NITheCS and the CSIR, basically Sagren is within the NITheCS cluster in the CSIR, and NITheCS is within the NGI, Next Generation Infrastructure within the CSIR. And NITheCS is, as my colleagues have mentioned earlier, made out of 3 legs: a CHPC, which is the computing, DERISA, which is large data, and Sagren, which is the network connectivity. That's what Sagren focuses on, the network connectivity and the services related to that network connectivity. We support science, research, and education, obviously, which is for public. We do not connect private institutions, because we are using government money since we're fully funded by the Department of Science and Innovation. Basically these 3 legs of NITheCS, 3 legs of Sagren, DERISA, and CHPC form the NITheCS, which is the National Integrated Cyber Infrastructure System. Okay, and then TNET, I will speak on that just now. Just to come back to Sagren, Sagren as a group is made out of 4 teams. We've got network engineering, which designs the network and supports it. We've got projects and procurement, which does the procurement of the respective links or network connectivity after network engineering has designed. And then we've got services development and incubation, which develops new services. Sometimes we don't develop them. We get already developed services by other organizations, e.g. SafeNet with EdgeRoom. We implement it locally, incubate it, and hand it over to TNET. And then we've got CSET, Computer Security Incident Response, which does proactive security scans and such, but I will get to that a bit later. Now, this part about TNET, as to where TNET comes into the picture, the South African NREN is made out of two entities, which is SANREN, South African National Research Network. The E, as you will notice, is small or silent. And then TNET, which is the organization formed before SANREN by the universities to buy this network connectivity in part can save costs. So when SANREN was formed, these two organizations formed what is called the South African NREN. And TNET is funded by universities. We are funded by DSI. So what SANREN does is design and build the network with the funding received from DSI, and we develop services and incubate them. And after that development, they are handed over to TNET, who then operates those services. Some we do not actually hand over to TNET, but TNET primarily operates the network and hosts the services, some developed by SANREN. I'm trying to move as fast as possible. There's quite a few slides. And then we've spoken about the regional trends. And then Ubuntu Net Alliance, as to where that comes in as SANREN. We are part of Ubuntu Net Alliance, which basically interconnects these NRENs, these national research and education networks together, and connects them to other regional RENs, as you can see with a link going up to London to connect to Giant and Amsterdam, where we find the Giant, which is a regional REN. Basically, Ubuntu Net Alliance connects quite a number of institutions, serving 1.5 million students and staff. The members is the darker brown or red, as you can see. Those are participating institutions or countries in Ubuntu Net Alliance, where you find the NRENs. Currently, there's 16 countries, and the Ubuntu Net Alliance was founded by the European Union. However, the funding and the ongoing support is through the participating NRENs, of which SANREN is one of those NRENs. And I will
you have 1 minute, Mr. Kwala. You have 1 minute.
Only one.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Basically, this is our network. We have 100 gig links for our core network, and we've got regional links at 10 gig, and we've got dark fiber links in the East Coast, and we have a managed bandwidth links in the. We've got dark fiber links for our backbone, and then we own a part of WEX on the West Coast, and we've got connectivity on the East Coast. This is basically the summary of our network. We also have what we call metropolitan links, where we've got dark fiber rings in all the major metros in the country. And then just to speak about CSET, we do proactive scanning of universities and science organizations, where we scan for security. We do proactive work, and then TNET does the reactive work once the vulnerability has occurred. These are our services. H-Room was incubated by SANREN, but it was developed by SafeNet. We've got data transfer services, large data transfer services for over 100 gig and under 100 gig services that we offer as SANREN. And then we also have Sapphire incubated by SANREN, handed over to TNET, which allows universities to offer services to participants from outside that university through federated identity. Just Ubuntu Net Alliance, moving very fast, is the southern node of the Open Science platform, which basically supports open platform, moving very quick. But what Ubuntu Net Alliance does is they maintain the continental
research archive, Africa RX, which provides open access platform. And then these are the partners that we work very closely with. Sagren is targeting TVET colleges with internet connectivity. I've spoken about NRF, Sarao, speaking about the SKA, SANSA, and such. And then these are the universities. They are all connected in the Sagren network. And these are the science councils that are part of the Sagren network. And then we support digital transformation in the research and education through the services that we offer. We have a fully meshed network. If any part of the network goes down, you will not see it due to the full redundancy that we have. We upgrade bandwidth as required, but we try and offer a minimum of 1 gig to any institution that we connect. And we're exploring increasing our mandate to connect other organizations. Thank you. That was the last slide.
Thank you. You finished just before the second warning. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your the Sagren network and how comprehensive it is. The next stakeholder is the South African Center for Digital Languages Resources, SADC, and the presenter is Professor Langa Khumalo, who is the director of SADC. Professor Khumalo, you're welcome to go on full screen and start your presentation.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I'm very happy to be in such great company. I'll talk on SADC and its open science initiatives. SADC is short for the South African Center for Digital Language Resources, which is part and parcel of the South African Research Infrastructure Roadmap established in September of 2016 to run as part of the 13 research infrastructures that were launched then. And the South African Research Infrastructure Roadmap's remit is to provide facilities, resources, and services to the science community, and to generate, exchange, and preserve knowledge. And SADC is the only one of the 13 research infrastructures that were launched that focus primarily on humanities. So the mandate of SADC is broadly to ensure a digital future for all official languages in South Africa. And these languages are divided into two main groups: the Nguni group, that is written conjunctively and is made up of the isiNdebele, Siswati, isiXhosa, and isiZulu, and those of the Setswana group that are disjunctively written and include Setswana, Sesotho, and Sepedi, and of course the last two, Xitsonga and Tshivenda, that don't fall into these two main groups, and English and Afrikaans. And very recently, the South African Sign Language was added as the official language in 2023. So the remit of SADC actually is premised on the Constitution to provide resources that are required for these languages to be treated equitably and to function in all domains of knowledge production and knowledge dissemination. And in doing that, not only do we increase access to science into these linguistic communities, but we also unlock access to hitherto inaccessible forms of knowledge that are carried and conveyed through these languages. But we know that in practice, we function mostly in English, as we have been doing since the start of this workshop. So the challenge, the biggest challenge, is to develop resources that will enable a European Union style of functioning in all the official languages in the EU and transpose that system to South Africa to function in all the official languages in the country in all domains of knowledge production and dissemination, and of course extend that to SADC, because SADC has also its official languages. So the bane of these languages is the absence of language resources that enable their use in all these areas of specialization. In South Africa, there has been a lot of work in human language technology development, in natural language processing development since the turn of the century. There has been notable efforts at the University of Stellenbosch, University of Pretoria, University of South Africa, Cape Town, UCT, and Johannesburg at Wits University. And there has been technologies developed at the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, and of course at Northwest University at the Center for Text Technologies and the African Speech Technology Project between 2000 and 2004. And these resources have made significant progress. They have spanned between developing corpora that are necessary, which is our linguistic data sets in all the official languages, and small-scale HLT technologies such as your speech-to-text, text-to-speech technologies, again in all official languages, translation systems that are machine-driven, machine learning systems that afford translation between all the official languages, but with limited data sets, these functionalities are also very limited. So the effort is to expand the data that drive these systems so that these systems can function robustly and in all areas of knowledge competencies. So despite these efforts, the mostly African languages are still characterized as under-resourced with limited knowledge base. So what is quickly the structure of SADC? It has a hub and spoke model. The hub is at the Northwest University at Potchefstroom campus, and it has 6 nodes that are sitting at the universities of Pretoria. That's our digitization node that develops multimodal data sets, multimodal corpus resources. The University of South Africa that develops semantics and terminology word nets. The multi-university collaboration, ISAILDA, that develops language development and teaching technologies, your writing instruments and your academic reading instruments. The CSIR, which develops our speech resources and technologies, and CText at Northwest University that develops text resources and technologies. And our newest node at the University of Stellenbosch, the Child Language Development node. At the global intercontinental level, SADC is an active member of the Clarin-ERIC, which is the Common Language Resource and Technology Infrastructure in Europe. And it is a full member in that network. And it has carved out a research niche in that European infrastructure network in developing those resources that inform and are informed by African knowledge competencies. And we plan to launch an African Knowledge Center within that European infrastructure network. And of course, we are linked to the Linguistic Data Consortium in the United States. Our effort in advancing open science and the principles of open science, basically open data, open access to resources that we develop, and of course, open access to and link to the society where we draw these data sets and where we derive mostly the networks that actually enable us to develop some of these technologies. In digitization, in digital humanities, in the escalator program, And what we have recently launched as the SWIP program, which is an acronym for Soodyall, Wikipedia, and PanSALB collaboration, and the data stewardship, which I will conclude with in this iteration. The digitization program is a proactive effort to extend language resources in and across all the South African languages. So the Note projects to develop language resources that are digital text and in speech corpora for those that are existing, and the creation of those that are linked to a specialized corpora, because any linguistic activity produces massive data sets that needs to be harnessed and be curated, stored in such a way that HLTs and NLPs can be developed from those resources. WordNets and terminology development is taking place at the UNISA Node. As we know, the terminology is as a result of the fact that our languages, or most of our South African languages, have not interfaced with science enough for them to gain the efficacy of use in the teaching of most of the science subject. And the imperative is there for terminology to be developed, and infrastructure to store that terminology, so that that terminology is accessible by all schools, all universities, for the interface between language and science to be seamless. Transcribed speech corpora is happening, and automated speech technologies have been developed by CSI and deployed. One of the main ones was the Aweza MAD tool that was developed to interface with COVID patients at the height of the COVID pandemic, that enabled doctors to interface seamlessly with patients that speak all the 11 official languages then.
Professor Kumar, I can give you 1 more minute.
1 more minute.
Yes, please.
That was fast, although I tried to move at a breakneck speed. The DH, the Digital Humanities Program, is focusing on promoting and supporting uptake in DH methodologies that are premised around computational competencies, and within that is the Escalator program that is driving the uptake of computational techniques in the teaching of humanities and social sciences, using the affordances of various software and other technologies. The Escalator, I have made reference to that. The promotion of science and access to science between communities is actually driven by the SWIP project that I made reference to, which trains and cultivates various editors with varying competencies in language, in culture, in various areas of science, in writing and presenting these in the wikis, so that these knowledge document can be shared in the languages that these communities speak. I could say more about that, and I really would welcome members that are attending here to check from our website, our SWIP and Escalator program, because we are going across the country in training people to actually develop and deploy some of these science and arts and language based knowledge documents, and share them within the wikis so that these can be accessed by the communities. So that's an important initiative that we have embarked to get in partnership with Wikipedia and PanSALB. The statistics are there for the impact that these initiatives have had, but most importantly, the potential to enable long-term impact is there, and we need to work collaboratively, not just in South Africa, but across the SADC region, so that some of these technologies, particularly the spelling checkers, the grammar checkers, that these languages need for them to interface with science, can be shared more broadly and scalable, and even bootstrapped to other languages that are spoken outside South Africa, so that again, the objective of improving access to science, access to data can be broadly achieved. Jay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Khumalo. That was a long minute. Thank you very much. So the next stakeholder is the National Institute for Theoretical and Computational Sciences, and the speaker is me. So I will speak for half an hour. No, I'm just joking. Let me see. No, I can't share my screen. Okay, yeah, let's see. Okay, yeah, it seems to work. Just a second. I find my presentation. Where is it? Here we go. Voila. While the previous speakers were talking, I deleted a few slides so that we can catch up, and I will try to keep it as short as possible. Yeah, NITheCS, as some of you might know, is a new national research institute, which is based upon 4 pillars, which are research, training, engagement, and opening up to the African continent. It's in the spirit of open science, it is really a truly multidisciplinary and multi-teamed institute, yeah, because although it is born out of the previous National Institute for Theoretical Physics, it supports now also research in mathematics, statistics, astronomy and astrophysics, quantitative biology, including bioinformatics, quantitative finance, Earth system and climate change modeling, as well as data science. Yeah? And a little bit provocatively, I like to call it an undisciplinary institute, yeah, because what we are trying to do is to put the big challenges that South Africa, Africa, and the world are facing at the core of the research activities, and we encourage the various disciplines to work together to solve them. NITheCS has a network now of about 300 research associates scattered across the South African provinces. We are organized in 5 nodes. And if you look at the definition of UNESCO of open science, which was mentioned before, and so I won't read it, you can see that what NITheCS wants to do is exactly open science. So the definition of UNESCO of open science is essentially the program of what NITheCS is trying to achieve and will achieve. Yeah. So NITheCS is really strongly linked to the concept of open science. And, it might be interesting for you to know that NITheCS, although it has a network of 300 associates, there is only one scientist that is full-time appointed by NITheCS, yeah? And that is me. Yeah. So at the core of NITheCS is the collaboration across the associates, across the disciplines, across the provinces, across the universities. Yeah. So without embracing fully all aspects of open science, the NITheCS concept will not work. Yeah. So another way of looking at NITheCS is that it is just the science village that we need to raise the next generation of scientists in South Africa and Africa. Yeah? And again, the only way to be successful and to have an impactful research program, an impactful training program, an impactful research program, and really important collaborations across the African continent is if we do it together. So you see, NITheCS is really based upon open science. And I will stop here so that we are again more or less on time with the program. Yeah, so thank you very much for listening to me. Next in the program, we have the Q&A. We have just under half an hour for discussion. And I've seen that most questions in the Q&A has been answered. So that maybe I would like to encourage you maybe to raise your hand if you have a question, and we can give you then the right to speak. And please keep your question short and maybe address it to the speaker that you would like to answer the question. So please don't be shy. Raise your hand and we will give you the right to speak. If you already have the right to speak, just start the discussion. To raise your hand, you just need to click the raise hand button more or less at the center of your screen. Nobody seems to want to break the ice. Here we go. Here comes the first raised hand. And let me see if I can give the... yeah, okay, you should have the right to speak. Please.
Hello.
Yeah, please, we can hear you.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity. We got a lot of the information for democratizing the knowledge in Africa, open science. I am from Somalia. We have no contributing this valuable insights. How can we be but this valuable insights? Also, we have no data repository, and also for this, we have no a lot of the center for the research area. How can we make to join this important opportunity to develop our capacity, our engagement? Over to you.
Would you like to answer your question?
I can try, Prof. Thank you very much for the question. I think the question is legitimate and very important, and I think it applies to a lot of countries, which is why I think we need the initiatives like the African Open Science Platform to be able to create a network where we can obviously, across the continent, be able to share, for example, capacities, but most importantly, be able to coordinate our activities and efforts. We do have the East African Open Science Platform in Kenya, based at JKUAT, at the Institute of Capacity Development. And we are hoping that going forward with our partners, capacity partners, including UNESCO and others, we'll be running avenues, including, for example, around policy development. There's already a very good set of dialogues that are happening in the different African regional economic communities. East Africa certainly has hosted a number of platform dialogues this year in terms of engaging stakeholders at a national level. For example, to think about moving towards developing these open science policies, because I think that's where we need to start. I also think if you're in Somalia, the Ubuntu Net Alliance, the NREN of the network of networks for Southern Africa and East Africa, is also becoming more active in the open science space. Indeed, just like the presentation that was just made, Ubuntu Net Alliance is a AOSP node. So we're hoping that going forward, we'll have more activities in the space, and then that should have impact on the network of stakeholders, including in Somalia and elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tshiamo Motshegwa. We have another question by Taye Beyene Demisi, and you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask your question. And please, encourage all other participants to raise their hand so that we can allow them to talk.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I would like to thank
you need to unmute yourself.
do you hear me now?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Yes, thank you so much, Chair. First of all, I would like to thank all of the speakers for their nice presentation. My question is probably to Suzanne, I think, or the rest of the team can also answer it. Yeah. When we are talking about open science, we are also referring to open access publishing. If we are not publishing, there is no meaning of accessing or just talking about open science. So as you know, most of the publishers are charging the researchers. We are doing the research, we are publishing, but they are also charging us, unless we are going through the traditional subscription way. And some of them have their categorization of the institutions or the countries through, for example, research for life. And in this category, for example, if you take Botswana, Botswana is in Group B, and we are expected to pay 50% of the publication fees. If you go to Ethiopia, for example, Ethiopia is in Group A and it's free. They are not expected to pay anything, and they can publish open through the open access. If you take South Africa, there is nothing. It's not eligible, so they have to pay 100%. So is there any kind of initiative that undergoing to motivate or the governments to support open access publication fee support to the researchers? Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I can go into answering the question. Thank you very much for that question. Your observations are absolutely 100%. And I would really drill down to your question. Is there any initiatives to support article processing charges in the developing countries? So my quick answer is no. There is not. But I think there it's very important is that we continue with our negotiations. As you mentioned, eLife, and you're absolutely right, there's nothing for South Africa, but Botswana has 50% discount. There are other initiatives as well, like IFIL, Electronic Information for Libraries, who also negotiates free access for certain countries. Unfortunately, publishers have decided to categorize countries under this level 1, 2, 3, and 4, as per the World Bank categorization of developing countries, and that is what distinguishes the one country from another country, which is also problematic, etc. So there's still a lot of work to do in this sphere to make sure that we do ensure access to knowledge for the different countries on the continent specifically. But therefore, there's also a big drive is to make these journals completely open accessible and diamond open access, where it's free to publish and free to search. I think that's also why the project in which ASSAf is involved in, where we look at the perceptions of APCs and then to broaden the study in Africa, will be extremely important, so that we could have sort of a benchmark study in which we can go back to publishers and even to open access publishers who charge us APCs, is to inform them about the way forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Susan, for the answer. And please, I would like to encourage the participants again to ask questions and raise their hand. And if the previous speakers have comments, please, they're also most than welcome. Yeah. Maybe while people think, I also have a question. I don't know if for Susan or for somebody else. You know, we've been speaking about open access, but open source software is also very important. Yeah. What initiatives are there at the moment to encourage our region to produce more open source software and to collaborate in open source projects? Maybe Mervyn can comment on this.
No, thank you, Prof. No, at the Center for High Performance Computing, we have a technology blueprint that gives very high weighting to open source software. And so we encourage the team, I encourage the team to invest time and energy into developing internal software that's localized. And so for us as a center, the key principle is localized services. So that is localized software, and open source software allows us to tailor-make code for our internal use. Whereas if you buy commercial software, it's very difficult to access the internal code because that's all proprietary. And so for us, at the CSPC, it's something that we are kind of put a lot of effort behind. It does have quite a bit of challenges and drawbacks. And so when you are focusing on open source software, if you don't have a very strong community that supports the software developing effort, you're actually left stranded and isolated. And so for us, we already start to see in some areas within our space where initial ventures that were open source are now beginning to lose its momentum and its membership, because just as you're finding some of the key users of a software are migrating to commercial software because it offers better roadmaps, it offers better support. And so I think there is a kind of an upside and a downside. But I think when it comes to open source software, I think we've got to make probably put more effort into, first of all, establishing stronger communities that support open source development, that support open source projects, and that support open source communities. But also we've got to also grow the skill. And so it has to go together. So you have to have sufficient resources available to provide the support, and then you've got to establish those communities that kind of have the stickiness to actually go the distance and not lose hope when things get difficult or get very hard. Thank you, Prof.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mervyn. Are there any comments?
Yeah, I think I can come in also, Prof. I think it's a very important topic. I want to bring this in through the prism of research data repositories. I think a lot of institutions do not have these repositories. And I think you got two choices. You can either go through proprietary licensed products or open source available products. And I think there is a value here in trying to create a community of institutions that maybe consider using these open source repositories, and then also creating a network to support each other and those that have got expertise in supporting them. I'm saying this because in terms of affordability and equity, it may be difficult for some institutions to afford some of the licenses being bandied about. So I think it's very critical. If you don't use it, it will never grow. So it's very, very important that we look at the open source alternatives in the ecosystem for research data repositories. And I also want to mention, I think Anelda is here. I saw some of her comments on research software. There's a lot of very good software that is produced as part of research. It's very, very useful for that, very good tools, those scripts that are developed to be shared, if only for producibility of some work that has been done. So I think we need to package these things as purposeful software projects to be able to share this. And I think there's a number of efforts around the world around this. I think Anelda is there. I think I saw her typing something. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tshiamo. I don't know if Anelda would like to reply. She just posted a comment in the chat. Otherwise, I think Jo Haveman raised her hand, and you have the right to, you're allowed to talk. So you're pretty welcome to share your question.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I just wanted to point out that with Africa Archive, we are specializing currently on supporting African institutions to set up their own repositories or to leverage the existing ones with open source software. Like we also use DSpace currently for Africa Archives repository that's cross-continental. So if you're interested, any of the people in the audience, we are very much interested in collaborating and supporting you in the way forward. Just wanted to add that to the previous question and comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the link, the relevant link is in the chat. So please click on it or save the link. And Anelda joined us in the speaking community. So Anelda, please, you're welcome to make your comments. And you've been put on the spot earlier.
Thank you so very much, Tshiamo. Thank you also for mentioning the work that we've been doing at RSSC Africa. The RSSC Africa is a community of African researchers who program or support hardware, computational hardware, data centers, and any other infrastructure that is relates to digital and computational work. And you are welcome to join us. We've been struggling to get the voice of Africans in the international RSE community. And as I posted in the Q&A as well, in September, I will be joining the International Research Software Funders Workshop, which is an annual meetup for people across the globe who funds research software, and there will be no other African voices in the room. Not by lack of trying to get people to this meetup. It's an invitation-only funders workshop. So it's the place where decisions are being made globally about how research software is funded, policies related to that, what kind of training is funded, how is software sustainability funded as well. So there are a few questions that I've posted in the Q&A. If anybody in this room have answers to those questions and would like to chat in lead up to the workshop, I would really like to take real world examples and information to this meetup and bring it back to this community as well.
Yeah, thank you very much, Anelda. I think that is really very important, because I think research software development needs a lot of support. Because you know, I code myself, but I don't want to claim to know how to do a software package or something like that. Yeah, so we really need to increase the support for research software development. I think this is a very important point. So thank you very much. And all the links are in the chat. So please, you're also welcome to subscribe to the newsletter of RSSE. And if you have material to assist Anelda present at the conference that she will be attending, please, you can get in touch with her in the chat. Do we have any other raised hands? Because we still have a few minutes for discussion. If not, maybe another question that I'm happy to ask to all the speakers. Yeah, we discussed open access to. Sorry. There's Adam raised his hand. Adam, please. You just need to unmute yourself, please.
Hello, can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. Thank you for giving this opportunity. I am come back again. I need to emphasize one important issue. In our country, we have a lot of crises. Mostly we are facing the flood, famine, and drought. We have no any data related to that issue. Since 2017 up to now, we have outbreak of the cholera in our setup. The current issue rising from the African countries, especially for the Mbox also, it is another challenge. For that, we have no any data related to this issue in our country. Can we get the data repository directly from the open source, or we can support us to follow with our institution in the country as a personal level or the institutional level? Over to you.
Thank you. I'm not sure who would like to answer this question.
I think, Prof, there's been a number of, I think COVID taught us a lot. I think there's been a lot of projects during and after COVID to try to look at this issue of health data, especially in regards to pandemics. I've posted on the chat there some projects done through the Vodan network that they started doing a lot of good work in this space. And I would imagine repositories like these, biobanks, should really be guided by at the national level. And again, it goes back to what we were saying regarding the need for national level policies. But there's no shortage of good examples regarding data repositories in the health space and their use. I think maybe we could connect the colleague to some of the colleagues who've been doing good work in the continent in the health data space. Thank you. In fact, there is an ongoing conference as we speak that I'll put the chat on the chat regarding fair data in the health space.
Tshiamo, much appreciated. And Rabab El Sharif has raised her hand, and please, you're welcome to unmute yourself.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, please.
First of all, I want to thank all of the speakers for their valuable information. We really get so much benefit from this information. My question is, let me introduce myself first. I'm Professor Dr. Rabab El Sharif, Dean of Faculty of Nanotechnology, Cairo University in Egypt. Actually, I'm so enthusiastic about open sciences, and I want to encourage my students to join open access to fulfill the benefit of cooperation with all the African countries. I want to know the thread or how to start with this open access through African countries and make some contribution to spread the value of new technology like nanotechnology in all African countries. We have many facilities in our faculty, and I want to share these facilities and make some kind of scientific cooperation and projects with African countries to fulfill the value of our faculty and our mission and vision, to see all our countries raising up to be developed countries. So I want to know how to start with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the question. Yeah, that I think we will in the next panel discussion and in the closing of the workshop discuss the way forward. Yeah, because probably it's one of the aims of this workshop to find out how to move forward and how to set up a kind of an implementation plan for open science. There are probably many things that we can do, and we will maybe in the course of the next discussion also hear some concrete steps toward the implementation of open science across Africa. I think
very quickly
please, Tshiamo, please, welcome.
Because the colleague was speaking from Egypt.
Yes.
I just wanted to alert them that one of the AOSP nodes, we have an ASP node in Egypt to represent the North African region. It's at the National Authority for Remote Sensing and Space Sciences. And again, it's through those nodes, for example, that we can engage regionally. So I'll put a link, I'll put an email of the colleague so that the Egyptian colleague can also work very close with them to see what type of programming in terms of open science is done in that region. And I've also put the link to the ongoing conference on fair data that is in Leiden, in the health spaces. And I think the issue of making data fair within the communities of practice, either be health or geophysics or astronomy, is a key one. There's very good projects that have come out with very good outcomes regarding helping communities make data fair, because the colleague was talking about nanotechnologies. So I think with the relationship we have with the International Science Council Committee on Data, Core Data, and some of the synergies, there could be some nice initiatives that with the Academies of Sciences, maybe we could think about projects to really work with communities of practice in terms of making data fair. So those would be my comments, Prof. Thanks.
Thank you very much. That was a very useful intervention. Maybe we can allow a last question by David Chizompola. Please, David, you can just unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you. For now, I don't have any question, but I've been following and I'm clear. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, I saw your hand raised. That's why I thought you wanted to ask a question. Okay, then I think we're doing perfectly well with our timing, and it's time to ask Dr. Melusi Twala to introduce the SADC Academy of Sciences before we start with the panel discussion.
Thank you, Prof. Petruccione, and greetings to all the attendees from all over the world, mostly from the continent. It is really with pleasure and a big privilege for me to introduce some of our partners that we have attending today as National Academies of Science. Within SADC, we really work as a unit between the different academies, and it is really a privilege that today a majority of our partners are here today. I'm not going to read, the long bios that we have of the speakers because we all have them, but just for the formality and for recognition, I would like to welcome Dr. Elizabeth Barnasin from our counterpart Science Academy in Malawi. We also have got Dr. Kamisa Skinmani from last, that is the Lesotho Academy of Science and Technology, as well as Dr. Joseph Mwela, also from BAS, that is the Botswana Academy of Science. Then Dr. Tabile Ndlovu from Eswatini, also representing the National Science Academy as the president there. Then lastly, Professor Gabriel Kabanda from Zimbabwe, representing ZAS in his perspective today. So those are really the participants that will be engaging now in the panel. And I think it just reflects that already within the network of science academies within SADC, there's already fertile ground because we are already working on this. So I'll hand over back to you, Professor Petruccione. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Twala, for introducing our panelists. And maybe we could start by allowing each of the panelists in the order in which they are listed in the program, maybe to start with a short 1 minute or two statement, and then we can kickstart the discussion out of there. Dr. Banderson, would you like to start with a short statement on open science from your point of view?
Thank you so much. And thank you, Dr. Melusi and Prof Francesco, for giving me a chance to speak. I'll be very brief. Open science is something that countries, more especially that are developing like Malawi, should embrace. However, in the past years that I've known it, I've found science, like, for example, I'll speak for Malawi, very competitive, and people withholding data, and because of different career stages that they're in, or the spaces that are in, that forces them to do that because science have always been viewed as competitive, and that has actually delayed the development of science in the countries. And one of the things I've seen that mostly for the young scientists that are really striving to climb up the ladder in their academic careers, they find it really difficult just to share their data open because they're really wanting to do some groundbreaking work to prove themselves that they have done something that they need to be recognized for. And that has been something that has really delayed how fast Malawi, for example, would embrace open science. So I would say, in short, it's a concept that has been there for a long time, but mostly people do not understand it, including some of the people in the academic areas or in academic platforms, not because they do not want, but maybe because there's no full awareness of what it is and what are the benefits of it, and how is the direct contribution of it to the development of the country. And more importantly is the confusion between the intellectual property rights and how that has either delayed or would enhance open science. We will need to push more to make people understand that if you give your data out, to what limits do you want to go, and how does that affect your intellectual properties? And those are still areas that we will need to navigate through in Malawi. And I hope in some other countries as well, to make sure that we propagate forward the agenda of open science for people to understand it and be able to embrace it for the development of science and advancement of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And maybe we can ask now Dr. Makamisa Senekane to do his statement, introductory statement. Makamisa, are you there? sure. Is Makamisa Senekane there?
Oh, sorry, Prof. I was
yeah, here
muted.
we go. Here you go. Yeah, hi,
Thank you very
Makamisa.
much. Thanks, Prof. I'm finding you.
Good, good. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me just quickly go through the brief introduction. Yes, my name is Makamisa Senekane. I'm from the Lesotho Academy of Science and Technology. So my brief remarks about open science is that I think it's a good initiative that actually we are exploring open science because it enables equitable access to scientific information, which we need in terms of development. As a country, we need access to scientific information for development. In this case, when we talk about science, I think of science in a broad sense, not just natural sciences, but in terms of social sciences, human sciences, and the rest in the natural sciences. So access to this scientific information is very crucial, and it's important that we have discussions like this or platforms like this to explore open science and how open science can be implemented in Africa. One key challenge, I think it's the challenge for most of African countries, Lesotho included, is the lack of infrastructure for open science. We need to actually think of how we can ensure that actually relevant stakeholders come on board and to ensure that actually we develop proper open science infrastructure in Africa, in different African countries. We have seen already from the Morakabi from SADC office that actually most of the countries are not investing enough in science towards science and development. So that's just something that we need to explore, like the best practices that we can use to maybe convince the government to invest more in science and development, because without a proper investment in such, we're always going to be, we're not going to be as developed as we want. I think that's all that I wanted to say. I hope I spent a minute, Prof.
Thank you very much, Makamisa. You were perfectly on time. Thank you very much. We will come back to you just now. Next, I would like to ask Dr. Joseph Mleba to make his initial contribution.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming through to this webinar. My name is Dr. Joseph Mwelwa, and I'm from Joint Minds Consult and Botswana Academy of Sciences. My first initial reading to the discussion is that open science is an important catalyst for development and innovation in Africa, and especially in the SADC region. The SADC region is being confronted by complex challenges, some of them being driven by climate change. And to confront these problems, to confront the problems of youth explosion in the SADC region, we need science, and open science will be a catalyst to give us the ideas and the innovation we need to solve these complex problems. But we should also be aware of the fact that one, we have serious challenges. As we talk about democratizing open science, there are serious challenges in terms of linguistic chasms. As you know, the African colonial legacy of linguistic baggage that we have has presented democratization of open science, because that makes communication and standardization very difficult. A lot of the science systems in the SADC region are operating in silos, and we need to make sure that we access science across these domains. And we also need to understand that infrastructure is weak. And as you saw from the SADC presentation, the investment into science in terms of financial contribution is very weak. And so those are some of the serious challenges. However, we are looking at opportunities that open science will bring in order for us to move forward. And so we are looking at solutions. Some of the solutions are inherent in science academies. Some of the solutions are inherent in African open science platforms. And indeed, governments are making progress towards formulating policies that will enable open science to thrive. So for now, I'll end here.
Thank you very much. You raised a lot of interesting points that we will have to go back to just now after we have this first round of introductions. Thank you very much. Next on the list is Dr. Thabile Ndlovu. Please.
Thank you, Prof, for that introduction, and good afternoon. Is it afternoon? Afternoon, everyone. I'm Thabile Ndlovu from the University of Eswatini. I'm representing the Kingdom of Eswatini Academy of Sciences, abbreviated KEAS. I think for us, it is quite we are happy to participate in some of these discussions because in the country, Tshiamo, we haven't had most of this. And I think it's the work of the academies to bring such discussions to the fore, especially because some of this information is not readily available to our colleagues. The previous speakers have talked a lot about making data available and all the benefits of open access. I think the issue of working in silos is also one of the things that are also killing us. I think one of the things that we need to also talk about is the issue of predatory journals, which also bring the clouding into this open science space where people are trying to get their work published. And if they do not know how to differentiate, it also creates some of those barriers, especially the up and coming scientists. So I think there's a lot that we need to talk about. Is open science is here for us to, I think the value of science is in us solving our societal problems. So if we can't do that, then we are not doing justice to the science that we are doing. I'll end here for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ndlovu, also for raising another series of very important aspects. And last but not least, we have Professor Gabriel Kabanda. Professor Kabanda, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, for that opportunity. Good afternoon, colleagues. I'm the Vice President of the Zimbabwe Academy of Sciences, and I would just want to comment on a few areas with regards to the practices and certain things that we're doing in Zimbabwe, in conjunction with also with other science academies within the SADC region. We have taken the open science approach in a manner that we, as an academy, we've always been looking at sharing the data, the publications, and various initiatives with various stakeholders in the country, within the region. And our efforts are being stepped up now with the advent of open science to ensure that the scientific work is repeatable and replicable also in different sites and places. Now, we have worked quite a lot in terms of policy harmonization, accessibility of research in many areas, and we continue to collaborate extensively with other academies within the region. But I think the challenge that you see on the ground with regards to the initiatives that we make as an academy, it does include the infrastructural deficits that we see throughout the country, the capacity and the skills gaps and the funding constraints, and other areas to do with the regulatory barriers and cultural attitudes. Some of those areas have been identified, and we've been working on trying to see how best that can be resolved. As an academy, we have seen inroads by working closely with other academies like ASSAf in terms of regional collaboration, the innovation and growth that comes with what we are doing, and I think that work is doing. But the efforts that is going on that needs to be stepped up is the influence on government policies to ensure that there is inclusivity. And so the policy advocacy work is an area that has always public awareness, are areas that we ought to step up our efforts and promote inclusive policy design in different areas whilst we are focusing collaboration. There have been good experiments on the ground, Mr. Chair, on some of the successful projects done in some rural areas that are being replicated and shared across the countries, where a real simple village is converted into something that is meaningful, and all those areas are being shared, and we're using that platform. But I think maybe I would also then hasten to add that the academies have recognized the successful initiatives done already through open science, such as the African Open Science, the national NRENs, that are already fully functional. But what needs to be stepped up now is the need for us to come up with the National Open Science Cloud so that we can share data more openly, to step up and introduce, in particular, digital literacy and infrastructure development programs, and also the Open Science Ambassador Program, where the champions on open science can get much publicity and attention whilst we are also working on improving many things. And I think lastly, would also comment that with some of the initiatives that we've done in the past, it has got sufficient attention to the government that some of the top fellows of the Zimbabwe Academy of Sciences, among the 10 national heroes that were identified, 7 of them are fellows of the Zimbabwe Academy of Sciences. So I think the government does fully appreciate the role of academies and also the role that open science can potentially give in. And issues of ethics are issues that we are attending closely to ensure that there's inclusivity and equity, the cultural sensitivity, and many other things that are necessary for ethics. So this is quite a great opportunity for us to be engaging in the discourse concerning open science, and we can continue to share our practices with other academies and key stakeholders that are presented. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Professor Kabanda, for raising a series of challenges and opportunities. Yeah. So we heard from all panelists a list of challenges and opportunities, and maybe we should now try to dig a little bit deeper in some of them. Yeah, and maybe we can start by addressing the more general picture. Yeah, which is that of implementing policies for the adoption of open science in the various countries. Yeah, because we heard, I think, in the introductory keynote presentation that not many countries have already official policies in place. Yeah, would some of you like to comment on what role can the Academies of Sciences play in governments adopting and implementing open science policies?
Yeah.
Please, Professor Kabanda, please.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair, for that. In terms of the role, really, the academies can actually deal with long-term success and balancing global standards with regards to open science. And there are a few things that can be put in place. The first thing is really to work on the advocacy and leadership, where the policy advocacy and thought leadership that comes with it can be spared and led by the science academies. That's the first thing. I think the second thing also that science academies can take leadership on is on capacity building and training, where we can organize workshops and training programs throughout the institutions, countrywide and also across the region. The third area is an academy. Academies can also play a role in infrastructure support, where we could host and maintain repositories of technical information, working together with support of the NRENs and other academic and research networks. Fourthly, I think I see networking and collaboration. Academics have always been at an advantaged position where they can network with literally any institution within the country for purposes of sharing scientific research and so on. I see also monitoring and evaluation. This is a role that science academies can also make, that we can track progress and evaluate what has been done in the past to ensure that we learn from those curves and share and many other things. And I think maybe lastly, I would think supporting local research and innovation, where innovative solutions are promoted and fully supported academies can bring in an attractor which is fully supported by governments and private sector and so on. And a success story concerning this, which has happened well in Zimbabwe, is the concept of innovation hubs that have been established in a number of universities. This is a scientific initiative that has come through as a result of the role that science academies have worked on in terms of influencing the nation and coming up with solutions that can solve the local problems. So these are some of the things I can share with you with regards to the role. And then the rest are just strategies that I think we can then look at now, how we can contextualize open science in a manner which is relevant, localize it, deal with ethical issues, or manage in particular issues to do with intellectual property and ownership. Those are some of the things that have to be treated carefully and be managed in a way. But these are some of the roles that I can share with the colleagues, and the science academies can take care of with regards to open science. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Professor Kabanda. Are there other comments, please, regarding the area of open science policies?
Can I come in?
Yeah, please, of course.
Yeah, I think, thank you, Prof, for that prelude. But I think one of the things that I hope I'm visible.
I think your video is off.
God, do I get it on? Can someone speak, please, while I sort out my video?
Okay, is there anybody else who would like to comment on the policy aspects of open science before we move on to another aspect? Yeah, please. Sorry, Dr. Ndlovu, please.
Yes, I think Prof covered most of the things that academies can play a role on, but I think the issue of resource mobilization is also quite key because most of African researchers, they also lack funding for the research. So I think in addition to all that the Prof said, I think we also need to be instrumental in trying to mobilize for resources for research in the different countries as well as open science. So, yeah.
You know, that thank you very much for raising that. That was another aspect where I wanted to get to. Yeah, what can we do to encourage all our governments to invest at least 1% of GDP in science, technology, and innovation? Yeah. Do you have, Dr. Ndlovu, a practical suggestion or an argument that every government would be convinced to invest more?
It's a very difficult position probably for us. We would like to learn from South Africa, who are probably one of the leaders in funding research. But I think our countries, through the continental initiatives as well as the regional initiatives, because the African Union, the SADC are also pushing for the science agenda. So I think in most of our countries, we are seeing a movement, but it is relatively slow. I'll make an example with our country. We still don't have a science research council. It has just been passed in parliament. It's just still being implemented. So you can imagine how much research funding we have, how much research opportunities have passed by because of lack of some of those opportunities. But I think slowly the advocacy in that aspect is increasing. And I think one of the other main challenges that we face that are also hindering some of the research initiatives are the fact that decision makers also don't understand the space. So the advocacy part is also quite critical. One of the issues may be because some of these decision makers also don't understand the space of science, because in other countries, these are not qualified personnel or maybe in their space or researchers by nature, so they don't understand the value that research brings. So it's a process that we are trying, and the continent and the SADC region are also trying to help our countries to move into a space that can allow for that.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Dr. Ndlovu. You also touched on very critical aspects. I just want to follow up with Dr. Mleba to see if he's now in a position to make his contribution. Joseph, are you there? Even if we can't see you, you're welcome to make your comment.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
But you can't see me, right?
No, we can't see you, but you're welcome.
Oh my God.
It's okay.
I'm so sorry. I think this amplifies the challenges in open science and the challenges of infrastructure being not homogeneous. But nonetheless, I'll make a point about policy. And I think one of the things that we need to invest in as academies of science going forward is the investment in policies and policies that are going to truly reflect democratization of open science. And one of the policies that need to be enacted is a policy that will promote indigenous languages. And I think I like the work that is being done at Soodyall because they're developing a template to carry African languages. If we're going to provide solutions to challenges that are confronting governments in SADC, we need to make sure that we carry along languages that carry the science, that carry the communication, that carry the innovation. And so we cannot allow academies of science to operate in a monolingual fashion and perpetuate the discrimination in knowledge sharing and collaboration that monolingualism promotes. And by monolingualism, we are looking at English, we are looking at French, we are looking at Portuguese, and we're looking at Spanish. We need to embrace the work that is being done at SADLA and begin to put finances and funding into systems that will make our languages begin to carry science, so that we can then begin to promote citizen science and citizen participation. After all, science is a public good, and we need to make sure that that comes through in our policies.
Thank you very much for those interesting comments. Yeah, and how can we then? Sorry, Makamisa, you are raising your hand in the screen. Please, Makamisa, go ahead.
Yes. Yes, Prof. Thanks very much. Yes, I also wanted to highlight something about the policy, which was also mentioned, the issue of information asymmetry. The implementation is difficult in some cases because there's an information asymmetry between the academics and the government. So what I was thinking, the role of open science could be to empower not just the government through information dissemination, could also be to empower the citizens so that they could apply more pressure to the government, not just the scientific community applying pressure to the government. If the citizenry is empowered, then it's easier to have allies that could pressure government to implement some of the things, including maybe putting more money into research and development or STI. I think what is necessary is to empower citizenry for participation in policy formulation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Makamisa. Dr. Banderson, please.
Right. Sorry.
Sorry. Let's allow Dr. Banderson first. Yeah, and then
Yes,
we can come to you, Dr. Kappa.
Yeah, I just wanted to, listening to the other speakers and the other presentations, there was one thing that really I caught with attention was the need for academies to be intentional, to include open science in their strategies. And I think that's something that is usually coming late in most of the academies, and I can confirm that in the Academy of Sciences for Malawi, we completely missed that one out. Now, if we include it in the strategies, and then it gets streamlined easily into some other activities that the academies are doing, because we're intentional about it from the beginning. And then the other thing I wanted to emphasize on was the issue of open science education, which others have maybe referred to it as advocacy, but I'd like to emphasize it as education. If we start to tell the young people about open science when they're still young and they're responsible for it, and they know that they need to be transparent even in the smallest things that they're doing in sciences, in the next few generations will not worry whether science is open, whether people are able to access things or not, because this is being implemented at a grassroots level. Not just at a grassroots, but we need to go higher, but we need to intensify on open science education. I'll give you an example of an organization called Trend Africa. Worked with a number of them, but at an individual level, where there are volunteers from coming all over the world, coming into Africa to teach people not just about open science, but even open hardware. I'm a scientist. I cannot afford to buy a qPCR machine for someone who knows about molecular science. And what these people are doing was to teach me how to kind of make something that would look like a PCR machine would still give me data that a normal PCR machine that I would buy from another manufacturing company would. But the problem we met was that if I produce my data from a qPCR machine that I fabricated, which is an open hardware, the science community will not accept my results because they want me to quote the exact model where I bought that machine and everything that comes along with that, because it's not been accepted because we are not well educated about it and what it comes with and the benefits of it and what it can actually do. So I look at myself, there was somebody, I think one of the speakers who mentioned, I think is Dr. Paula or somebody in South Africa, they mentioned about Chinese Chinese Academy coming to South Africa and collaborating with South African Academy of Sciences on open science, which is really good. But then one of the questions I asked myself, how far are the scientists in China compared to a scientist in Malawi? How much will I be at par at them when I'm doing this science with them? And how open will my science be open to them? Will they trust my data if I do it here? Or will it be easier for me to trust their data because it's been generated with state-of-the-art equipment somewhere in China? So we will need to intensify and be really intentional about open science and invest so much in education of it so that people understand it, the pros, the cons, the benefits, and how much it can do to change the landscape of science. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Dr. Banderson. You raise really a core aspect of the discussion. Yeah, without proper education and training, it would be very difficult to implement open science policies. That's very, very critical. But I think Professor Kabanda is burning to make another comment.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just have got two areas to contribute. One on sustainability and the second one on the integration of regional research agendas. But let me just start with sustainability. As science academies, I think the thrust that you should be making is to ensure that there is sustainability of the open science initiatives. So how do we do that? We can look at various areas that are important. The development of sustainable infrastructure is one area where we can work on digital repositories and open science platforms that are made or put in place to make them scalable. So if science academies work in partnerships with similar institutions to develop sustainable infrastructure like the NRENs, where the cost of running that infrastructure is covered automatically and people will pay as they use in some ways, or other initiatives, I think that infrastructure can be sustained and it can run as a company or some sort or a business. The second area in terms of sustainability is the policy and governance frameworks. That for us to advocate open science policies and establish governance structures, it's important that we promote and increase accountability and in certain things we do and align ourselves with some of the regional goals, national goals, especially aligning with the national goals. I think that will ensure then that there's continued support from various key stakeholders and so on. The funding and financial support also needs some sustainable business models. It's an area that science academies have not learned that much, but I think we can bring all those kind of areas. Yes, so we can continue to work on capacity building, cultural changes. But I thought in terms of sustainability, there's a lot that the science academies can work on. The last thing that I wanted to add on is on the integration of the research agendas at a national or regional level. I think there is common ground and common efforts, and we can be able to achieve much ground if science academies work more closely. We've been working closely in the past, but I think if we can intensify that and add other units in terms of the development of ethical guidelines, I think if we agree to work on developing ethical guidelines for the SADC region, I think that will really be a very good thing to start. We can also agree and work on capacity building and education, like what my other colleagues have spoken about. I think we can share certain approaches, and where we have platforms also on policy advocates, working with government ministries and money ministers, working closely with the ministries, working closely with stakeholders, and sharing monitoring and evaluation frameworks. These are some of the things that also are important, that if we integrate a lot more on our research agendas at a regional level and share those things, we find we can uplift the standards. We can see then our stakeholder institutions coming in also to be part of it, and they will begin to see the relevance and importance of the science of academies. Okay, so I thought I would just share those two issues, sustainability and integration of regional research agendas. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Dr. Mukwevho, please.
Can you see me now?
Yes, now we can see you.
Great. Thank you. I think just very quickly to add on what Prof is saying, in terms of sustainability, I think one of the things the Academy of Sciences should do, and also to address issues of silo mindsets in science, is to, first of all, begin to develop a systematic evaluation of open science practices in the SADC region. We need that data. Right now, listening to the presentation, there's a lot of anecdotal data about where science, open science practices are occurring. So we need a systematic database, and to map where open science is happening, we need to catalog the initiatives that are taking place. Right now, there's a very important project that's going on in the SADC region, and it's called OSCAR 2.0. Susan talked about it in our presentation. And this was catalyzed by private sector initiative in consort with European partners. And we were able to collaborate and put into the project higher education institutions in universities in Zambia and Botswana. And this initiative is very deliberate. It's looking at what practices are available, what can be done to transition universities from the traditional science practice to open science practices. It's going towards developing policies. There's funding for infrastructure development in terms of hardware and software, and then, of course, dissemination initiatives. And it's got a 4-year lifespan. So similarly, academies of science need to begin to move along those lines so that they can begin to develop projects to begin to implement open science practice. I've been, and my team at Joint Minds Consult, we've been involved in open science discussions since 2016, and we are still talking implementation. So we need to begin to be deliberate, and you heard the director of African Open Science Platform was calling for projects. So one of the things the academies of science need to do deliberately is to begin to develop, initiate and develop projects that are data-based, but that are going to be sustainable because they're going to deal with issues of silo mentality and dismantling that, and building systems in higher education institutions, in institutions of learning that are going to sustain the practice of open science besides the other issues we talked about. And funding, you will see funding will become available because there are organizations internationally, and of course governments will begin to put funding available to academies of science because they are promoting systems and processes that will initiate open science for sustainable means.
Yeah, thank you very much for this contribution. Are there other thoughts about how open science can strengthen the collaboration in the SADC region? We heard from Dr. Mukwevho an example, but are there other examples or other strategies through which we could increase the open science collaborations in the region?
Prof, I can come in here.
Please, Tshiamo. Thank you very much.
I think one of the key things, and I think it's coming up profoundly here, is the issue of funding research continentally, nationally, regionally. It will be very, very important to situate science properly as a vector to address societal challenges in our countries. Then the national development plans, but somehow it's not coming out very clearly as an area to fund accordingly. So I think in my presentation, you show me showing, for example, in SADC, some of the key instruments. I think also the SADC colleague mentioned them. The SADC regional, the indicative strategic plan that has got a number of pillars. There was an exercise to unpack it and say, look, there's 7 years to go to 2030. What are the initiatives that could be carried out during that period under the umbrella, for example, of the RSDIP? And I think it will be very, very important to push a very strong value proposition for open science in the context of a dialogue with policymakers and other stakeholders to really situate it as a very important vehicle for addressing some of those gaps there. And I think it will be critical if we have projects that can then obviously help us really deal with issues like, for example, data governance across the border. If you look at some of the challenges that are across border, we need to think about how can we develop instruments, policy instruments that allows us to, for example, effortlessly share data during times of crisis. And I think projects like that, maybe under the umbrella of the disaster risk reduction policies that we see there, may be a purposeful way to proceed. And I think it's very critical also that even though it's sometimes challenging for countries to develop open science policies ground up, maybe they can look at revising the existing STI policies to infuse some open science programming in there. So I think those are the 2 points that I wish to make at this juncture, Prof. Thank you.
No, thank you very much for the intervention. And I see we are coming to slowly to an end of the time allocated to the panel discussion, and maybe we could end like we started, allowing each of the panelists to do a concluding remark. Yeah, and maybe let's follow again this time the reverse order in which the panelists are listed in the program. Let's start with Professor Kabanda. Would you like to make a concluding remark?
Okay, thank you very much, Chair, for that. I think from what we've discussed and the way I see the future with regards to science academies in the context of open science, the future is very bright when you focus on 4 things. I think the first area of focus will be the improved access to knowledge. This is an area which has been demonstrated extensively by some of the initial initiatives in open science and open educational resources. Most of our universities within the region have already been practicing OERs, and so we can extend that concept so well so that as we improve access to the knowledge, I think that will be a great thing. The second contribution from open science perspective is the global collaboration. I think if we work across the entire African continent with some of the invaluable experiences that we've had from Africa to the Americas, to Europe, India, China, and so on. I think that global collaboration, like what some of colleagues mentioned, and cross-border research projects, I think if we also intensify our efforts, let's share information on any global collaboration initiatives, and then we also respond appropriately. And then the third thing would be also to enhance our visibility and impact. We have to, as science academies, we have to improve that visibility on open access platforms, research visibility, promoting indigenous knowledge, and ensuring that we enhance the global reach of research conducted in the SADC region. I think visibility and impact is very important. And then lastly, the training and education arena, we have to reach out. It's important that we also provide opportunities for training, capacity building through open access, especially on research methods, with some of the tools and online courses, so that we can build research capacity in some of the less resourced institutions. I think we would have done a great thing if we focus on those 4 areas. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, for that.
Thank you very much, Professor Kabanda. Then let's ask Dr. Ndlovu for the concluding remarks.
Thank you very much, Prof. I think for me, what I take from this webinar is that we need to have more discussions like this, because that's where we share experiences from the different countries, and you get to understand what is available. The world is quite small nowadays, but we need to move away from the silos. I think we've said, I think one of the things that we also need as academies, advocacy is one of our main mandates in the different spaces, and this should also include dialogues like this, so that other scientists are empowered about such opportunities, and also the pros and cons. I think I mentioned earlier that some of our scientists, they fall into the traps of predatory journals without knowing. So it is our responsibility to educate and also advocate issues of infrastructure. We know that we are struggling in many areas, but collaborations can also try to help us close those gaps. And I think open science gives us the chances that we can leverage on what other scientists, not just in our individual countries, have. I think ASSAf has done a good job in leading and sharing their experiences with all of us. I think I can end here for today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ndlovu, for your concluding remark. And let's move on with Dr. Joseph Mwelwa. And please, I apologize to all of you if my pronunciation was not 100%.
That's fine, Professor. Mwelwa.
Mwelwa.
Mwelwa,
Thank you.
yes. Thank you very much, Prof. Very quickly, I think we've had very excellent presentations and very informed discussions. But to conclude, I think we need to put policy formulation and development front center. A lot of academies of sciences could do a lot of work in that space to try and galvanize national consensus and discussions at national level for policy formulation. Secondly, I think we need to recognize that open science is in the nascent stage compared to mature systems such as those in Europe. And so we need to make sure that African Academies of Sciences are able to promote open science, and this will require a lot of advocacy work, national awareness building, so that our citizens truly begin to participate in science. We also need to broaden the language of access to knowledge and science systems. There's no point in talking about democratizing science when we are talking English and French only. African languages, as demonstrated by Sadler, can begin to be powerful vehicles, but we need to start somewhere. There's a template there. If SADC has to move to an industrialized and innovative state by 2050, open science will be a catalyst to power that aspiration. And so academies of science have got an inherent responsibility to make sure that they put to access their knowledge systems and help governments meet that goal. And then thirdly, what we require right now is a project design knowledge and skills in academies of science so that we can begin to respond to calls such as promoted by the Director of African Open Science Platforms. We need to develop projects that will begin to implement open science on the African continent. And lastly, funding can be quoted if academies of science are seen to promote open science through rational projects that will promote the aspirations of the national governments that they are representing. Thank you. And the private sector, by the way, can play a very important role in moving that needle. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for really a comprehensive list of implementation strategies. Thank you very much. Next, we have Dr. Makhamiza Senekane. Makhamiza, please, you're welcome to do your concluding remarks.
Thank you very much, Prof. I'll just like to highlight some few points. The first one is that when we talk about open science, we should think about rethinking the way we approach science, including the access to scientific information. So you should be rethinking science. That's one thing that I wanted to highlight. The other issue is that the academies should play a key role. I think it was also highlighted by Prof. Kamanda that academies should play a key role in ensuring that actually we promote open science in various countries within the region. And collaboration is also quite crucial. The last 2 points before I leave is that we have already mentioned the issue of infrastructure barrier. So we need to find ways of engaging different stakeholders, including the private sector, on how to invest in open science infrastructure in different countries. And finally, I think this is what is also advocated by ISC, International Science Council. We need to think, if we want to implement open science, we need to think in terms of missions, trying to create missions, using mission-oriented approach to the implementation of open science. I think that's my last point. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Makhamiza. And last but not least, we have the concluding remarks of Dr. Elizabeth Banderson. Please.
Thank you so much. This was a wonderful discussion, and I think the things that I take away and that I would like to emphasize on, and that keeps on coming out, is the issue of collaboration within the academies and between academies, not just in Africa, but we can also take advantage of the academies outside Africa who have implemented this successfully and how best we can learn from them. A good example is the collaboration that is yet to happen between South African Academy of Sciences and Chinese Academy of Sciences. That's a very good platform to learn from. And also one thing that I think we need to remember is that it's not one size fits all. we always have to remember that much as this is open science, we also have to be very careful to pay attention to the specific needs that different countries have and how open science can address that. So we need to take this back home and sit and also rethink on how this best fits in our best case scenarios and how best we can promote it to the advantage of the development of the science agenda within the country, in the continent, and in the world. And then the last thing that I think that academies would do together is collaboratively advocate for a science policy, an open science policy that could be something that academies in Africa or SADC can decide to come up with something like a paper, a position paper or something with different representatives in state about the open science advantages and share it. We can start from different heads of state, like people who have presidential dialogues in different countries. We can start from there and work with different departmental organizations. No, don't forget the science councils, because this cannot be done in isolation. We have to put everyone on board if we're to be very successful in it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Banderson. And I think this is now the point where I really have to thank very, very much all the panelists in this really motivational panel discussion. We learned a lot about the challenges, the opportunities. We heard a lot about really practical implementation strategies and the potential huge benefits that adopting an open science approach to science will have for our region. Yeah. So thank you very much again to all of you for your time and for your really valuable contributions. Yeah. So the next item on the agenda puts me on the spot because I'm supposed to outline the way forward. I've taken a little bit of notes while all of you were speaking this morning, and I will try now really briefly in 5 minutes to summarize the major points that were addressed. Yeah, the first theme that was recurrent was really the adoption and promotion of open science policies. Yeah, and we really want our academies of sciences to be instrumental in the developing of national open science policies. Yeah, it was really stressed a lot that this is the first critical step. Yeah, that we need to put in place, and of course it needs to be aligned with the international UNESCO guidelines about open science. Yeah? Another point that came up several times is the improving of open access to research outputs. We need to encourage our scientists to publish in open access journals, and we need to, of course, offer the opportunity to publish in open access platforms. Yeah? So we need really also to develop regional repositories, yeah, for open access publication data and other resources, yeah, across the spectrum of the research and educational outputs. Yeah. Another aspect that I think came through strongly is the need really to support and encourage data sharing. Yeah, and this means that really to implement open data sharing practices. Yeah, because we want the data to be open accessible, but we also want them to be interoperability between the data. Yeah? We want the data sets to be compatible and accessible to everybody. Yeah? So interoperability is a crucial aspect of the open data science and practices approach. Yeah? Another really critical aspect is the capacity building. Yeah? We really need to offer training in open science practices. Yeah? You know, in my opinion, yeah, the challenge of open science is the philosophical aspect, yeah, not so much the infrastructural one. The infrastructural aspects and technical can be solved with money, yeah. The philosophical aspect needs a lot of convincing and training and education, yeah. And that is where is I think that a lot of effort needs to be put. Yeah, we need to train people in how to use open data, how to produce open source software. We heard a lot about research software engineering. Yeah, that's obviously part of it, and we need also to engage with collaborative open research methods. Yeah? It doesn't help if everybody does research in his own little office. We need to open up the way we do research. Yeah? This leads, I think, smoothly to the next point that was mentioned by almost everybody, which is really the need to establish collaborative, I don't know, we could call them research networks, yeah, across the region. Yeah. Somebody mentioned the need of kind of interdisciplinary research hubs. I don't remember if that was the exact name that was used, but you get the spirit, yeah. And this, if I can really promote again as for a second, NITheCS, this is exactly what NITheCS is trying to do, yeah? Really to establish an interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, undisciplinary, yeah? Collaborative research network so that we can really address the big challenges. Yeah? Climate change was mentioned a few times, and that is a challenge that there will not be a single discipline of science that solves the problem. Yeah? It requires really several disciplines to come together and address the problem. Yeah? So really regional, continental, and global collaborations in the framework of open science are really critical. Yeah? Citizen science was mentioned. Yeah, that is really important. Yeah, we want as part of open access, encourage our fellow citizens to engage with our science and possibly to contribute actively, yeah, in helping us collecting data and so on and so forth. Now these days everybody has a smartphone in the pocket. Yeah, it's very easy to contribute by observing the presence of birds somewhere, yeah, and you can help zoologists collect data very quickly. Yeah? So citizen sciences is very important. And that is also probably a tool to advocate for the policy changes. Yeah? If the citizens are engaged, our policymakers have to take knowledge of that and act accordingly. I don't remember now who mentioned that it's also important that we monitor the adoption of open science. Yeah? So this probably means that we need really to start thinking about systems to develop indicators, yeah, or metrics to measure the successes of open science, and as to be able to really share best practices, to observe where open science is successful, where it needs maybe to be tweaked to lead to success. Yeah, and I think lastly, sustainability was a big issue. Yeah, as part of the advocacy of the Academies of Sciences for open science, we need to lobby for our governments to invest more in open science infrastructure. Yeah. And also to invest more in funding for collaborations, because it's nice to collaborate in Zoom, yeah, but it's even nicer to collaborate in person. Yeah? And that unfortunately comes at a cost. Yeah? So I think these were some of the recurring themes, yeah, and probably it will require several more of these meetings to come up with a really straightforward implementation strategy to make sure that long-term open science will be successful. Yeah, and I have no doubt that open science is really the tool that we need to embrace to turn around the economic development of our region. Yeah? So thank you very much to all of you from my side. I now leave you in the hands of Dr. Melusi Ntwala, who will do the closing remarks and a quick summary of today's workshop. So thank you very much from my side to all of you for the valuable contribution, and I'm really looking forward to next events like this. So thank you very much and have a good rest of the day.
Thank you, Prof Petruccione. It's really been a long day, and we really appreciate everyone's participation today. Prof, you've provided quite a nice overview, so I'm not really going to delve much into that, but something that I just wanted to touch on was a common feature across all the presentations that we had today, and that was partnerships. There was really emphasis on how activities that are already underway are done in partnerships with, with various organizations. And that is something that I would like to take forward from at least an academic perspective. We already have got this network that was presented today during the panel. And Dr. Mola even said it's the responsibility. And that word was actually quite, it made a note in my mind. He said it's the responsibility of the academies to provide evidence that will support the policy making, considering that most of the presenters highlighted that there is a gap that still needs to be closed, in line with the policy making space. So, colleagues from the academies, I think we've got the homework now. The message couldn't be more clearer than this. We just need to consolidate after this and really strike a way forward on how we take the message from our nations through the AU as well as the SADC Secretariat, but avoiding repetition because there is already work that is going on the ground. Some of it was presented today. It will be good to learn on those and build on them, but just to avoid the repetitions. So in terms of closing, I really would like to express our sincere gratitude as the Academy of Science of South Africa to all the participants that are on board. Today, some have had to leave to attend to other commitments, but we are really grateful that when this call was sent out, there was a really good uptake. The participation today, the conversation that we had that was engaging, really indicated your good support. And we wouldn't have been able, to have such a good engaging session had all the speakers availed themselves, but there was no one to engage with them. So I really appreciate it for everyone who attended today's session. Most of the work, really, I can imagine that Professor Petruccione, you had a lot of work to do to prepare for today. I was really worried that if you were to have a cold, it will really be thrown off today, but thankful you had no issues in terms of any infection, but we really appreciate you preparing this work, going with us during this journey, but also ensuring that today's session goes as smooth as it did today. And I really would like to clap for that because I really think that was awesome. All the speakers really respected you, but you really ran that military show that you wanted us to run today. Just briefly to our speakers, starting with the multilateral platforms. From the Pan-African Parliament, Mr. Jalloh, we really appreciate the support. From the SADC Secretariat, we also, had some support represented by Mr. Morakabi. From the UNESCO National Commission, Mr. Carlton, Mukwevho, as well as our mother body as academies, the NASAC. It is really encouraging to hear messages of support coming from these multilateral platforms, which are instrumental in providing the partnership platform In one end, it is the financial support or the resourcing support, but also to facilitate, the message that comes out of such into the respective platform. So we really appreciate FAP, SADC, UNESCO, as well as NITheCS for participating today. Then our keynote address coming from my colleague, Susan, that was really, really, great. The history that you provided and coming to where we are, you remain an advocate of open science, and I think as the continent, we're really grateful to have you, and we hope you'll get better support with the other colleagues into pushing, this mission going forward. We know that in going forward, organizations such as the AOSP, represented by Dr. Motshegwa, will be part of those that will be pushing this engine going forward. Our friends from the Center for High Performance Computing, Mr. Christopher Smith, we really appreciate, because you've been part of this discussion as well, similar to Teresa, represented by Dr. Bahed, Mr. Dlamini from Sagren, as well as Professor Langa Khumalo from Sadila, have been a common voice and participants in the ASSAf platforms. In this discussion, we really appreciated the time. I mean, you've taken most of your days to be part of this platform, but I think it was really an important one. And as I said to the Academy, counterparts, the message and the homework that we've been given couldn't be more clearer. It is up to us now to take this message forward. Our SADC Academies of Science from Malawi, Dr. Bandasin, Dr. Senekani from Lesotho, Dr. Mwala from Botswana, Dr. Ndlovu from Eswatini, and Prof Kabanda from Zimbabwe. I thank you halfway, because I think the other 50% is you now, bringing us together as SADC Academies to do something. And then I'll thank you. I'll give you the other 50% later on once we've done, the mandate that we've been given today. From the ASSAf Secretariat, I would like to acknowledge the tech team through Ina and Tozama, who really worked hard to make sure that today was a success, supported by Henriette, they in the background, as well as other colleagues. But additionally, our head of the Secretariat, Professor Himla Soodyall, who's always been supportive of these engagements and always ensuring that we expand the partnerships within, the region, but also going continentally. Colleagues, really, it is just two words that I wanted to register. That is, thank you. We appreciate you. And colleagues, I would like to bring this session to an end with really registering all the thank yous that I can give you. I wish you well for the rest of the day, and bye-bye to you. Thank you.